Whee! Now, now we'll find out who's tuned in and can tell me whether or not we're actually they can hear us. Because welcome everybody. We look a little different than normal. Normally, I'm sitting in my basement chatting with somebody else in another part of the world, but I drove up to Seattle to meet with Ben and Brian, and they're working on some cool projects. You many watching will probably know Brian Snoddy, because growing up I pronounced it Snoddy.
That's okay. Everybody else does too.
Yeah.
Even though he draws it with the long. Okay, I never. I did it too, and then I was like, "Oh, Brian Snoddy," and then he's like, "I draw the O, the line over the O to symbolize."
The first time I met you was like 2012 at Emerald City.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, and I just brought up a bunch of old Magic cards and said, "Please sign." All the stuff that I kept over the
Phil and Kai Folio.
Yeah, they're
they just live right down the road, by the way.
I need to get her to sign the last Magic card. I have one thing of theirs left that she's not signed. $100 card in your deck. I was like, oh, don't go through the rest of the deck. There's a lot of money in there. But welcome to the library. I'm your chief librarian, David, and I'm not a real librarian. I just LARP as one. And, yeah.
Something might catch on fire during the course of our conversation. Hopefully not this, but hopefully.
They're doing additional cool stuff in the RPG world. So what would you like to initially talk about?
Well, first off, thank you for having us on the show, and thanks to all you guys who are hopefully tuning in. And sorry,
I'm off of my laptop because the really cool camera I brought didn't want to play nice with USB all of a sudden.
Yeah, we had to move the blender to put the laptop there, so that's what we're looking at while we're talking to you. Very uplifting photo of Chernobyl, creator of Badass of the Week. I wrote the Badass series of books called Epic Fails. So I've written 12 or 13 various history books that are hopefully exciting and entertaining and funny. And then, Brian Snoddy is original first edition.
So they had to reprint it.
We're like, sweet.
Damn, you left Snowdy's art on the floor. We have to reprint the whole set.
It was the only reason we got beta. It was they left his art out.
I love the stories of you like turning it in for like $50.
That's true. And knocking on the Peter Atkinson's basement, the glass slide.
With Larry Elmore a while back about he got approached to do art and he gave him price per piece and they were like, that's out of our range. He goes, yeah, that's what my rate is. But I mean, he was a very established artist. I was at a place in my life I didn't need to basically do charity work, which is kind of what it was the first.
For exposure.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't.
Well, you paid it like $1 million, so Brian.
Not $1 million. I did just a little more than 100.
Okay. So Brian, Kona Kitchen, and we kind of, but he's the illustrator on all of my books, and when we would share tables at Comic Cons, I remember being like, well, I know he's have him sign them for me when we sit at the table, and so I'm going through my cards, and I'm like, oh man, he did this one, he did this one, he did this one, he did this one. I was like, oh shit, he did this one, he did that, and I show up with this stack like this, like, hey.
I was like, well, I'll do a couple this year. I'll bring some more back next year.
I'll sign it for. I'm happy because without fans, I'm nothing. So therefore, I'm very thankful for all of you.
And then the dude like flips it around and is like, "Hey, we signed this for me."
Yeah, that was Delph.
My favorite signature in-game story was with Richard Gardner link for him to sign an altar, and he changed it so for every 1 damage the creature does, you gain 4 life. So blow it off, put it back in the sleeve. It goes back into the deck. I pulled it out because I didn't even know he was going to be where we were at, and we sit down and I end up playing with him, and so I have a Sarah write something on it and then puts it back. It said no effect on Richard. And then I go, wait. He goes, oh, pray I don't alter it again. I was like, wait, did you just alter a card?
Something like that.
It's and that's one of
the
the
things. Based off another popular.
Because I mean, the '80s was when role-playing games were getting a ton of steam. And it's funny because doing the library, we've got thousands of books now, and going through and. Now I'm trying to track down some of something so we can help save them, but it's rough, and it's funny seeing all these crazy ideas that came out in the.
They've risen up bigger and better.
Oh yes, and
I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is more popular now than
these early '90s of like there was a Marvel superheroes one I played. There was a Star
TSR
Wars one,
Star Wars is one of the best RPGs ever made. The from West End game.
We
They're
have to play that.
Yeah.
well, we have a bunch of GMs that run Paranoia at events. So if you ever want to, especially if you want to game at an event, we'll love to have you at sitting at a table and
that'd be
gaming.
awesome. We still do that.
And if you ever,
Oh,
and we play various editions.
That's great. Yeah, because I mean, we played those. We had the Buck Rogers one. There was a Buck
Yep.
Rogers one that was really fun. That I
I
really
remember
liked.
that. I never played that one.
I played the Sega Genesis game first, and then I found the paper one, and that's pretty fun. Like I liked it.
Her family owned the rights to Buck Rogers.
Really?
Yeah,
didn't know that.
and so yeah, she actually saved TSR before she came into TSR. So Gary fixed their books. She got them solvent. Gary actually offered like, "Hey, we need to bring her in," and then the big argument between him and the brothers, and then she ended up buying the brothers out, and then pushed Gary out. Yeah,
Sounds like
exactly.
You always need both, though, right? Because the creators don't. They're
Yes.
like, I have this cool thing, and I want to make
Yeah.
it, and it's cool, and I don't care what we
Yeah.
charge for it, and like whatever, just get it out there. And
Yeah.
you need
Well,
them-
and
you need
I
them.
tell a lot of
You're the
game
money guy,
designers
right?
and artists, like, you need a business manager.
Yeah.
But that business manager,
ALANCE balance.
yes.
Right? You have to have
Well, I
balance.
think about that with Badass a lot, right? So Badass of the Week is like, I take historical figure off, and that's how Badass is. It's all like historical dick jokes and like murders and destruction and killing. But like, with when I was gonna get it published, it was like, I had an agent, and the agent was like important because it's like there's a lot of ways that this could get picked up and become something really toxic or really just different. Or the manager is the person who makes sure that your vision is what gets made, right? That somebody
Yeah.
doesn't. In the wrong hands, this becomes something totally different, and something that I don't like.
Understands your passion, because I've seen people partner with somebody and then their idea gets watered down, or you see it all the time when what was the game, House on a Haunted Hill. So they had to come up with a whole bunch of new scenarios for the game, and none of them really got play tested. So the first edition of that game that got put out, the pool can randomly get put on the roof, testing everything, and they went from like 12 to like 36 like scenarios in the game. And because they didn't play the additional 24,
Yes, it is.
be like, oh,
Thank you, Ben.
this game is great.
We'll just make this and throw this out, and we'll fix it later. Don't worry about it.
Push the button 4 more times, and you'll be able to do what you're
We'll
doing.
patch it day one. It'll be fine. Don't
Oh
worry about
god,
it.
the Shadowrun.
Oh, don't get me started on
last minute, because they Cyberpunk 2020 beat them to market, so they didn't want to be just another Cyberpunk game. So like 6 weeks to publish, they said magic. We're going to add magic. So all the orcs
was
and
magic.
trolls. So imagine that game without the trolls, the elves, the magic, the shamans, the dragons,
That's
all
half
of that.
the game. It's just like
It's the whole game, isn't it?
So it was really just another
just
Cyberpunk game.
Cyberpunk 2077. Then.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like they went to all the artists, said, "Hey, we need new art." They,
Oh my God,
yeah,
can you
I believe they asked him to add elf ears because if you look at the cover of that book, there's only one thing that screams Shadowrun. It's one of the Deckers has elf ears.
That's
But,
rough, because Shadowrun was such a good game. I remember.
Yeah.
I
Oh, the
played
game
a
is.
lot of-
It is a
Shadowrun.
wonderful
I love
setting
it.
that happens to kind of have rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
The guy
the
who,
setting. I don't like the rules.
Yeah, the rules have always been rough, and it's partly because they crammed magic and everything in at the last hour to make it different, which made an amazing setting, but has always been a struggle with the rules,
Yeah.
and it's.
That's
but,
from around here too. Shadowrun's
yeah.
from.
Well,
Seattle.
originally, so it's set in Seattle, but Fossa was based in Chicago at the time.
But he lives
Yes,
here
they
now.
were.
Yes, it's based. So Fossa went out of business. Then Fan
yeah.
Pros.
Jordan
yeah.
Wiseman's from around here.
Yeah.
Like he's.
They sure did,
Yeah. Oh.
and they owed me money.
We were at. This is a.
I'm so sad when they went out because they had some of the most awesome IPs.
They had really
Oh my
cool
God.
stuff. They had
BattleTech.
BattleTech.
Yeah.
We were going to screen a Star Wars fan film that Brian Snoddy plays a stormtrooper in, and one of our friends,
That's true.
fellow badass, it was featuring Lando Calrissian, and it was fun. It was a fun little like 2-minute bit, but we went to this guy.
It was
his house,
called
this
Black Star Warrior.
Black Star Warrior. Yeah, and we went over to screen it at this guy's house, and he had a BattleTech, he had a battle mech, he had like a Timberwolf, and he had like a and then we leave. And we're like, this house is really nice. So we look up the guy, and we're like, oh, it's the dude who invented this stuff. So I don't know if I should have mentioned it to him or not.
I remember that because we had only met each other one time before that.
Yeah.
And Mackie was there, and your
little blankets. It was
yeah,
awesome.
everybody
It was
had like a
awesome.
little blanket that we could put on and watch the movie.
I did get to talk to him later. He came up to me at one of the Emerald City Comic Cons.
Jordan
Wiseman.
Jordan Wiseman.
And he came up to me and he was like, oh, I love Badass. He's like, I keep it on my toilet and I read it when I'm in there. And I was like, that makes me feel awesome. I don't know.
And then we went back there for the final cut too.
I don't think I was there for that one.
Okay.
Or maybe I only went over there once.
Okay.
I'm sure of
because
that.
I went there twice.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, I didn't get invited back. I
Yeah,
guess.
he's a really. He was upset you didn't sign his book in his bathroom.
I think I did. I think I signed it to his kid.
He's like, oh, I wanted you to sign it to me. You're not allowed back in my house now.
Sign it to my kid. So one thing that we want to do is we've been wanting to kind of come up with D&D modules, which is a thing that a lot of people are doing now, and it's kind of a little bit of a almost, I want to say like a little bit of a flood on the market here of a bunch of people who kind of want to do D&D modules, self-contained adventure, kind of do modern D&D kinds of stuff with a little bit more of an old school feel. So Brian was original Magic cards. He's done a bunch of real like an old school like Conan the Barbarian, like almost a lower Magic feel. Like we want to have, and so what we're working on right now is it would be all not digital paintings, like ink illustrations. We want to do the blue maps in the back. We want it to kind of have the look and feel of a first edition module.
I love the aesthetic of the original of the old art.
It is what it is, but like we're gonna bring that a little bit forward, you know. And then we want to keep the blue maps. We want to have this kind of old school feel to it, and the idea for what we want to have as the finished product. And we've done a lot of work on this. We don't have anything to show for it except for kind of the art, but like. When we do launch it, which will be mostly done,
it's about 65 to 80% done now.
It's pretty much done. We're playtesting it now, so
Yeah,
that's kind of it's done, but I can't show it to anybody yet because it's not quite right. I'm not quite ready to show it.
I'm always happy to always happy to hear about play because
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and the thing we told our people when we. Well, I want to get into playtesting a little bit later because there is this, I have a lot to say about that. But mostly what we want to do is kind of release these modules that would as kind of 3 versions where you'd have the 3.5 / Pathfinder version, the 5th edition version, and then if you want to play first edition old school.
Have you played with the OSR rules? Old school revival. So it's a lot of it's stuff.
He's playing like not even advanced Dungeons and Dragons, just dungeon because there's like a chart that you have to refer to when you.
Oh yeah, it's right.
We play
it's
right
advanced,
out of the
it's
right
advanced
out of
D&D, which is first edition.
Okay,
yeah,
that is. But yeah, we play it right out of.
Other than that, it's right out of the book.
Yeah, because there's going back. It's funny because having played. I started playing in '82 when I was knee high to a grasshopper.
82 for me too.
Yeah, my brother's 9 years older than me, so he was 13, I was 4, and I remember doing chores. In fact, our original that was right before Tom Hanks did Mutants or what was the stupid movie that Tom Hanks did?
Yes, he did. It was
Mazes and Monsters.
Mazes and Monsters.
And so I have reached out.
Pardue, I'm a holy man.
Yes, I have reached out to his agent or his agency, and like I want him before he shuffles off the mortal coil to play Mazes and Monsters as bad as it was. It was a horrible movie, and it really ramped up the satanic panic. Yeah. It did wonders for D&D. Because
like
tons
Gene Simmons used to say from Kiss. Yeah. Hi, I'm Gene Simmons from Kiss.
We got picketed all the time by the moral majority folks, and my dad. I remember. I think I was 6. We were being picketed, and I was like, "You're not mad with them?" He goes, "No."
That is like super badass. Right?
Well, and it's funny because the people that were willing to picket, they'd also be willing to like have a conversation with you. I don't know how many times my dad went out and talked to him and was like. oh, well, they're not playing as demons and devils. They're fighting them. In fact, if you want to sit down and really, and then,
because they don't know anything about the
exactly. So we were never afraid of those people. We were always afraid because I found out many years later that there were people on the other side that were out of the schools. So never worry about the person that's in your face, going, oh, you're a bad person, because whatever, they're just going to say that. The one that's going to council meetings, or Al Gore's wife going to Congress and getting
stickers put on album covers.
Yeah. Which just
back
boosted
in 1983 on my album. I think double my sales.
Yeah.
PMRC,
Thanks,
yeah, PMRC. So yeah, those picketers, they were, it was funny because we could go back and look that. Oh yeah, big Dead Kennedys fan. But I remember going into the store. We were getting picketed. It was after school. I was in kindergarten. I'm walking into the store, and they're like, "Are they teaching?"
I think about Gordon Ramsay when it's a weird transition, but like
Yeah.
Gordon Ramsay's always like when he goes and does the kitchen. Me and Brian Snoddy are big Gordon Ramsay fans.
I have a man crush on him.
And when he goes to the places and they're like, nobody's ever complained about our food. He's like, they don't complain.
And it's like, well, we don't get complaints. Well, you don't have customers, so
Right.
there's your
Exactly.
They
complaints.
vote with their
He's
feet,
right.
right? And that's
Exactly.
what kind of made me think what you were
Yeah.
saying. Like the people that showed up to yell at you, they don't have anything better to do than talk
Yeah.
to you about it. But like,
And that's always the frustrating thing with the internet is it's too easy to be that angry mob that can
Yeah.
get someone shut down. And I would try to compliment something on it, and I posted a book that people hated. They're like, oh, that person that made that is a horrible person. I was like, okay, I'm not saying anything about the person that made the book. I was like, here was a role playing game book. And I made a comment, and they were like, "Oh, well, you can't support this person." I was like, "I didn't. I legit just said, hey, here's a role playing game book, and here's something that you could, as a game designer or a book designer, take an idea from."
and this is the like the never meet your idols thing too, right? Which is like, here's the thing. Most successful authors are probably dicks. Like,
Oh, yeah.
like all the great ones were huge assholes. And you read about their lives.
Oh, yeah.
It was a complete prick, but he's incredibly popular.
Oh yeah. It's like, I love all the Hollywood stars that aren't on social media.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, you guys are probably the nicest people out there.
Yeah, they're
that's-
probably really nice.
That's my advice
Yeah.
for like all like budding people who want to like do creative things in the world is never tweet.
Yeah,
it's never
you have your
If
brand.
you do, just post about your art.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, you have your brand, and
Nobody cares what
yeah.
you think, and if you say anything that you say, any stance you take on anything is going to alienate a percentage of your audience that
Yeah.
you can't afford to alienate.
Yes, and it's a rough world. And I've talked to people. I was like, if you're tweeting or doing a social media thing for your company or your brand, try to be as positive as possible. People are like, oh, there was a game that came out a while back. They made a negative, like their very first post was like negative, and if you don't like this, don't buy any of our other games. And it's like, why would you come straight out the gate like that? Just put it out there, and don't kill off sales. The people that you're going to attract with that probably are not going to buy the book. Or if they do, they're not going to be long-term customers. They're buying it because of the controversy, which is never a good tactic.
No, because they're not going to... people who just buy it for the controversy, most of them aren't really interested in it. They're just trying to, screw the system.
Yeah.
Or find a thing that's wrong with it, right?
Yeah,
find
find
something
with
that
it.
they can post their blog about that, like,
Yeah.
that was a weird... That was
Half
kind
the
of
people that bought those Kiss albums when they were like, they probably didn't even listen to them.
No.
They just bought them because they were controversial.
Exactly. Yeah, and honestly, early D&D, we had people come in all the time like, hey, do you sell that D&D stuff? We're like, yeah, right here. And then it'd be funny, we'd put it in a brown paper bag because that's the bags we had. And
Here you go.
and
Here's
as,
your porn.
it's kind of that level. It's just well, it'd be funny because
It's a speakeasy. That's
we-
the name of our store.
we were the funny book factory.
oh, even better.
And so what we started doing is we started putting like comics that didn't sell well right by the counter because they'd get the D&D book and they'd be like, oh, and I'll take these. They wouldn't even look. They would just grab and they'd come out like, oh, you buying that D&D in there? No, Jughead Giant Edition.
Yeah.
You're like,
It's completely hollowed out
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
perfect size to fit the player's handbook.
they would just we would just put the most random things that weren't turning over, but they would sell because for about a 2-year period of time.
Called marketing.
Yes, because they would be like, oh, and I'll grab these, and just that way because they knew they were going to get confronted when they walked out of the store. So they were just like, I bought Archie. Okay, I haven't bought an Archie comic since I was 5. Like they're confused.
I'm talking 1955.
Yeah, that's kind of a new thing. Like I feel like anything you post on the internet is like that these days. Though you have to walk through that line, right? Where,
Yeah.
Like I don't know about you guys, but like I don't read anything. I don't read any reviews of my stuff. Like I know that like most of my books have like a 4.5 to 5-star review like rating, but I never read anything. I don't read newspaper stuff. I don't read anything about my stuff because I have anxiety and I don't like reading people who don't like my stuff.
I read them, Ben.
I could read
They're
27.
pretty good
I could
at
read 27 things saying that like, oh, you're awesome, and then one that's like, oh, I didn't like it when you did this, and I was like, I'm a fraud. You know?
I didn't like the font he used.
Yeah, I didn't even pick it, but oh my god, I'm sorry.
The publisher hired the damn designer.
Oh God, I went with the wrong publisher.
I should never have done this.
Yeah.
This whole thing was a mistake.
I'm firing HarperCollins right now.
So yeah, but that was kind of an unexpected thing with Badass is that like with Badass I was kind of just like this thing is awesome, this thing's awesome, this guy's cool, this guy's cool, this guy's cool, and like I feel like it's very easy to like talk shit on somebody who's doing something, right? You probably run into this a lot with people making games and doing art, and it's like producing art is a lot of like, I made this thing. Do you like it? Especially like sitting at these tables at comic book conventions and stuff. Like, do you like this thing I made? Do you want to give me some? Do you like it enough to give me money for it? I don't know, maybe. And it's very easy to be like, go to hell, right?
Yeah.
But it's very
By the
hard.
way, that's 100% accurate. Because I've lived that my entire life.
Yeah. It's very easy to be like, this sucks. It's stupid. If you like this, you're stupid. It's very hard to be like.
Even I'm gonna go hang myself right after I get this conversation.
Right, but it's very hard to be like not even like I made this thing, but like I like this thing. Just that's like a very bold statement to make.
Yes.
You know, like I think this is nice. Do you agree with me or no? You know. Like,
Yeah. Well, and that's why, like at conventions, because with the library, I'm running around talking to game designers, like and companies and artists, and like. Even though we don't have the funds to support things, I always love to give things that I like. I'd love to try to give them at least some positive feedback. Like, hey, can't afford to support you right now, but you're doing some awesome stuff. Keep it up. And I'm
we'll encourage.
Yeah.
This one mechanic that you came up with is cool and interesting.
Yeah.
An interesting way to tackle this, right?
Yeah, because there's somebody I'm trying to get on stream made one of the most batshit insane games ever, World of Cinnabar. And
I know Raven McCracken personally.
yes, I've been trying
Hi,
to get
Raven. How you doing?
been trying to get him on. World of Cinnabar is the perfect example. No one ever said no to anything he wanted to put into it, and it just more and more stuff. But weirdly, that's also what I like. It's nearly unplayable, but it is the most crazy thing. But it's his crazy, passionate world. Yeah. And it's a bonkers, interesting world to sit down and go, oh my God, this came out of one person's head.
Yeah, he put his heart and soul into that. I will say that.
Yeah, it's mechanically not a good game, but it is a really interesting world, and I'll tell people sit down and read through that book. You're going to learn a lot as a game designer of, oh my God, I need to scale my game back. Because that's something a lot of people run into is Star Wars episode 4, 5, and 6. There was somebody always around to tell Lucas no. Episode 1, 2, and 3, nobody told him no.
And it went to hell on him.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this is a bad idea. That's how you
Yeah.
with
By the way, no one's gonna watch this one.
Yeah.
Okay?
Wait, you're making a movie for kids about senatorial debates?
about trade policy.
Yeah, trade
Trade
policies.
policy, yeah.
Yes.
Crooked trade policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then he writes scenes for the blind because in Attack of the Clones, Anakin pulls up, you see Padme running out, and then the next scene is her. I saw you pull up. I had to come run out and see you. I was like, You literally just showed that on screen. You don't have to say exactly what just happened.
I mean,
So bad dialogue too.
Yes. Oh yeah. Bad dialogue and yeah.
Bad
I mean,
storytelling.
this applies to everything, right? This
Yeah.
applies to business too, right? Isn't this
Yeah.
right? Isn't like nobody telling you that this is a bad idea? The whole reason like cryptocurrency is collapsing right now.
Yeah. Hey,
Maybe we
Ethereum.
shouldn't defraud these people.
Oh god. I keep
Okay,
looking at
there's going
people.
to be a black bar that goes.
I love the concept behind cryptocurrency, but it is just so rife with.
I can't get into it.
Yeah, it's like-
personally,
yeah.
it's just, whatever you guys want to do.
Well,
Yeah.
If you look at any of like the let's not get political, but if we look at any big business epic collapse, right? You look at Enron, you look at WeWork, you look at Theranos, you look
WeWork.
at the FTX, any of this stuff. It's just you look at fucking Elon Musk needs somebody to tell him no, right? Like
Yeah.
you look at any of these big horrible like Zuckerberg needed somebody to tell him that nobody wants to go to VR meetings with their coworkers dressed up like a panda bear.
Oh god, the metaverse.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, like you just anytime
I
you
know,
get to
Eddie.
a certain level and you're like, I'm gonna do this, and you need somebody there to tell you.
Yeah.
You need somebody to be like, hey,
Yes.
you need to play test.
Yeah. Everybody always wants to have the yes man around them, but they never want to have the no. And man, do you need that no?
Yeah, that's why you play test. That's what we were
Yes,
talking about earlier.
exactly. And so with playtesting, as you've playtested so far, like what has been one of the struggles of getting that feedback back?
Oh, so for us, it's kind of like what we've been doing is kind of the way we approached playtesting was because we're trying to run a 5th edition D&D module, right? And we want to have this like old school low magic feel to it.
Yeah.
This kind of very like gritty, like the way we will describe our
A
adventures is
Rambo
like,
movie.
right. It's the way we describe our adventures is Conan busting into a bar, with, like,
Swords and sandals.
yeah, like
Yes,
blood
definitely.
and dirt on his face, right?
Yeah.
We want to feel the dirt in the armor,
Yeah.
But you have to be prepared to deal with anything that's in any of the books. So what we told our players, we got we have between 4 and 6 anytime we play because that's kind of what a module is designed
Yeah.
for. And we told them like we want you to try to break this because we need to be prepared for what if it's in the book, if it's in any of the like core rule books of this game, you can run it. It's fine. If you want to run we have a dude who's running an Eberron character that seems massively broken and messed up and is just totally like bypasses several of our challenges that we've come up with. But that's the game, right? There is going to be this game is written for like the target audience is like DMs who aren't going to come up with their own stuff. They don't have the time or the energy or the whatever, and they're running it out of the book.
Yeah.
And like the book needs to be able to handle weird outlier stuff. So we need our players to try and break the game so that we can kind of adjust as needed.
Yeah.
And that's hard sometimes. It gets frustrating when you're trying to DM that and you're running in and this guy's like trying to break and you have to like kind of keep in mind like, okay, this guy is helping me.
Yeah, and I've got a couple
this-
friends that they did a successful Kickstarter. They did it for 5e and Pathfinder. It was a game system. It was their own game, but they made versions that would run in each. And then right as soon as their Kickstarter ended, Paizo announced a 2nd edition Pathfinder. They're like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
They were like, "We literally just finished."
Yeah.
Then it's reaching out to all the customers.
Timing.
Yeah.
We're doing it for 3.5 / Pathfinder 1 because that's what my D&D my week I play every Tuesday night and
Yeah.
we're still playing Pathfinder 1 and then just
Yeah.
so that's the thing that I can off the dome like adjust scale for because I've been doing that for 15 years or whatever so like
Yeah.
But
I
also,
can,
if your scenario is fine and your balance is okay, you can still adjust it to any
yeah.
RPG system that's
Yes.
out there. And that's Ben and I talked to that at the very beginning. Like, where are we going to go with this? Is it going to be 1st edition? No one plays that except for you, Brian. And
Well, the OSR stuff is hugely popular right now.
yeah, so
Very happy with that.
there we go.
Maybe we should do it for that instead of
Yeah.
for 1st edition and just
Yeah, if you do OSR, because you've got Dungeon Crawl Classics, you've got the white box edition,
Yes,
you got the
I have a couple of Dungeon Crawl classics printed right there in that bookshelf. over there.
love I love what Goodman Games is doing with
Oh yeah.
with Dungeon Crawl Classics. And there's a million OSR games out there, that old school rival. You got the white edition, the black edition.
All that hack and slash stuff.
Yeah.
Did Goodman do the hack and slash?
I can't
Who
remember.
did that hack and slash stuff?
I don't think that was Goodman, but it's all in that same vein.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of different variants of it that are all easily portable amongst each other, because they're taking the vast majority of first edition rules, and they've just cut THACO and things out and put a more modern version of armor in there.
Yeah.
Just because THACO is not a bad rule. It's just
I hate it personally.
Its problem.
I'm on record.
So the problem with THACO is it's in the wrong game. I've seen THACO.
Well, the problem with THACO is THACO. It needs to be thrown out, stomped into, burnt, and just.
Well, it's because once you're sitting down with all the first edition rules and second edition rules, they're going one direction, and THACO goes off this other direction, and it makes no sense. But if you make
it
other
more complicated too,
it does,
which I don't like.
And if you take that rule and put it with other rules that are done the similar vein, it all makes sense. And you're like, oh, hey, this works. If you get your brain operating, in the negatives, then it works. But you have everything else doing percentiles or plus minus, and then this one random thing and I tell people,
Well, I played a ton of second edition. That was what I started with, and I played second edition for 6 or 7 years, for all of high school and and all of college. And then third edition came out, or 3.5, and they were like, I very distinctly remember being all haughty about, like, they got rid of THACO. This is bullshit. Look, the armor class goes up now. That's stupid.
I ran into a lot of people.
And then I read the paragraph, and I was like, oh, actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I remember early third edition running into a lot of second ed fans.
Eat this shoe.
Yeah, they're like, well, this makes it. I have to do math every single time. Like, once I know my THACO, I know it, and I don't have to change it. And I was like,
oh, well, yes, you do.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, you do. You have
still
to.
an adjustment. It's still math.
But also, in this room, you have a +2 to hit. So now what?
Yeah, exactly. So I was like,
you want to get rid of that?
Yeah,
idiot.
Yeah, I was like, it's everything. That's one of the.
Yeah.
I remember all through high school sitting down with like jocks. I was always trying to get the people that were just almost into that nerd culture.
Dabbling in nerd.
Yeah, they were like, oh yeah, I read The Hobbit.
Yeah,
like, oh hey, you want to play? So and I was dragging them in.
Football, I read The Hobbit.
Yeah, exactly. So I wrestled.
Kind of like if you were trying to get somebody to a satanic cult. And you were just you like this? You like
come
this?
on in.
What about this?
So I'd be like, hey, you want to play a role playing game? And they'd get excited about the idea. Like, yeah, I'd like to play a role playing game. I was like, you want to play Star Wars? Oh, that was a movie. I've heard of D&D. Let's play that. And you're like, oh. Like D6 Star Wars is easy. Like, hey, the Star Wars universe, and here's a pool of 6-sided dice. That's all. And I can teach you that in nothing flat, and then from there we can get you. But you bring somebody in that's just kind of like touching the nerdom in the 90s. Then you bring them in, and you start teaching them, and then you get to THACO, and they're like, and I'm done. Yeah.
My brother has a great theory for this because, the multi-sided dice. So Shadowrun only uses 6s. Mm-hmm. Warhammer uses 6s. There's several sets that only use 6s.
Yeah.
But my brother has an amazing theory for getting new players involved into Dungeons and Dragons, which is you give them a set of dice, and the 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever, but they're all different colors. And you're just like, oh, roll the red one.
Oh, that's actually a great idea. Yeah.
That's it. That's how he gets around. That. That's how he gets around the very common problem of I can't tell the difference between an 8 and a 10. Oh shit! I rolled a 10, but I rolled a 12, but I meant to roll the 20, and I only got a 7. But that's the high.
Exactly. That's I'll be honest. All the years that I've been GMing and getting and dragging new people in, I had not thought of that.
Yeah. Everybody different color. Every dice is a different color.
It is.
You buy however many it is, 8 sets of dice, and you mix them all in so they're all different. And you roll the red one.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I may end up working on that. Make some new players dice for the people sitting down at the table. That way, our GMs at events can be like, okay, roll me a blue die.
Well, they have those ones on Amazon now where you
Yeah.
get 10 sets of dice in their own
Yeah.
little bags. Yeah, you just
Yeah.
pull them out, mix them up.
Yeah.
Throw it
I
in.
bought those
You're
6
looking
sides,
Well,
from across the table. I can tell you the difference between a D12 and a D20
Yeah, and
after 20 years. But
exactly.
now-
Yeah. Well, but if you get like,
I can do it.
but if you get everybody at one table, all their D6s are red, all their D12s are blue.
Oh, yeah, you could do it that
and
way, too.
Yeah, color-coded dice.
Yeah, so I'm sure that I can work with a dice manufacturer to get plenty of that.
Yeah. Everybody rolled a red one.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you know,
that's even
hey, we're
better
going to
than
roll
what I
for
was
initiative. Your D20 is your red die, and just you go from there.
I'll be right back.
Okay, thanks for the warning. But no, I love that actually. So yeah, I'm
I
gonna.
have to credit my brother Clay. He's the inspiration for a lot of my ideas that I steal from him. He and I share DMing duties on our Tuesday night D&D games, and
Nice.
we run it for like a year at a time because we're like, I'm gonna just do a short one this time. It's only gonna be like 4 to 6 weeks. I think we can knock it out in 3 sessions, but I'm gonna give us 6. And then like a year and a half later, we're like, well, now we're on a flying carpet to like the desert world, so I don't know how long this is. We gotta buy a boat and sail back to go back to the main quest. So I don't know what's gonna happen. It's probably gonna be another 7 months. but yeah, so yeah, that was his idea. So
Nice.
it's pre-make the characters for your party.
Yeah,
And
and
then
events
give 'em the
we
dice.
do a ton of pre-made characters. I mean, we try to have pre-made characters. The only time we don't do pre-made characters is when it's a game where character creation is really fun and unique.
Like in Traveler, you can die during character
Yes.
creation.
And same way, I'm trying to figure out how to slimline the old Deadlands so that basically have the characters all dead. So character creation is done with a deck of cards. So you draw a card. So an ace of spades, you get 4d12 in that stat. But if you draw 2 of clubs, you get a 2d4. And so you need an 8 to pass. So you've got 4d12. You roll four 12-sided dice. If any of them are an 8 or higher, you pass. And then you can still, even if you have a 2d4, you can still get to 8 because all the dice are exploding.
Okay.
So you got 2d4, you roll a 4, you pick up that one and roll it again. If you get another 4, hey, you passed. And then you get 6 raises. So the more you pass by, the more successful you are. And it's like barely pass or get better. But because it's all done with character creation is done with a deck of cards. If you draw jokers, that counts as an ace. But you get some secret thing the GM or the marshal.
So creating a character is like the deck of many things.
Kind
you
of,
can keep
yeah.
drawing cards, but that's so the mix. I never played Deadlands, but Traveler is very similar. Where like Traveler, you start as like a 16-year-old, and you're like you're gonna go on an adventure. Do you want to be a warrior or it's a space?
It came out the year that Star Wars did. It
Like,
came out just before Star
Space
Wars.
Cab, you want to go in the military? Oh, I want to go into the Navy. Okay, all right. So you go into the Navy and you roll a dice and you're like, all right. So now you're a pilot in the Navy. And then now you're 19 and what do you want to do? Oh, I want to go to war. And it's like, oh, you rolled a 1. You died in the war. That's your character. Roll a new one.
Yeah.
You could just sit there and roll characters in this game forever, and there's a fun part. To
that actually
I
kind
did
of
that.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that happened with a party.
50-year-old general. He's just like got awesome stats and everything.
And then the nice thing is you can choose when to stop. So because there is a chart to randomly roll what your background is going to be. So I randomly got soldier, and then I ended up with 10 years of service.
Oh, nice.
And so and grizzled vet. My stats were awesome. So everybody else is trying to get close to what my character did, and they just keep dying. And the GM's just like, okay, look, all of you have 5 years. Whatever you get, don't care. You get 5 years. They're like, but nope, I am tired. We've been here for 4 hours for you guys all trying to match his lucky rolls. It's just not going to happen.
It's a whole different level of when you're playing with new players and you're like, okay, now we got to make characters, and you got to sit there for. I mean, the reason my brother pre-makes characters is because you don't want to sit there for 20 minutes explaining to a new character, a new player, the difference between intelligence and wisdom, right?
Yeah.
I can try to explain this to you. I'm going to be talking about this for 20 minutes, and then you're going to put a 12 in one and an 11 in the other. And it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. And
for your warrior.
Exactly. I just with D&D, I try to go, okay, here's your primary stats. That's why I loved 3rd edition. It was the first edition of D&D that you could take things out. So new players, I give them a handful of skills they could choose from, kind of briefly explain skills, get their stats. and get their attack bonuses. Never touch on feats because you hand a player and like pick a feat,
Well, first
and they just
edition
stare at
did
them.
not have feats.
No, third edition,
But
yeah.
they did have skills.
Yes.
And they had a chart there. It'd be like, oh, you made boats. Oh, you were a trapper. Oh, you know about the fur trade. Oh, you know about leather working. Oh, you're a woodworker.
This is a go-to for
stuff.
me with Pathfinder, and 3.5 edition had this also. But like whenever we start a new campaign, we have kind of a house rule where you get. There were a couple feats, or a couple skills in that game that had variable things. So you could. So we give everybody can get a point in craft, profession, or perform, and those were the ones that had the parentheses. You got to write what you craft, profession, or perform in. So it was like everybody gets a free skill point. You got to use in one of those, and it counts as a class skill. But pick one. What'd your guy do?
And I like that.
What do you do for a living, right?
Yeah.
What can you make?
Yeah.
What can you do? What do you do for a living? And weirdly, that comes up. Like, we had a guy who picked a librarian for his profession, and like, it's amazing how often that came up.
Yeah, and little backstory things like that can really, like, if your players really dig into them, they become a lot more. Your characters become more entertaining, and you're
more real.
Yeah, your players are they want to delve into those little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
I've played with people that are I say there's two types of role players: ROLE and ROLL. The dice chuckers.
Oh my god, I have a
They don't care about their background. I'm a barbarian. I'm a sorcerer. I just Eldritch Blast every
By the way,
combat.
playing a barbarian is really fun because you can do a whole bunch of weird stuff too.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, as a GM, I used to do this all the time in second and third edition. Okay, we're starting a new campaign, and then I'd hand players characters, and they're like, "Oh, I've never played a barbarian before. Neither have I. Neither." And they're like, "We're all playing barbarians." Like, "Yep."
I love that.
Yeah,
I
and
love those kind of ones.
just pick a character class that none of them have really played. Let them play a few sessions in out of their wheelhouse, and watch how they grow as a player. I've had pushback from groups, but most groups afterwards are like,
I think that's fun.
yeah,
super fun.
Yeah.
I had one where I ran. We were all ninjas, so I wanted to do like we'd been playing for 10 years or whatever, and we wanted to like try to do something different. So I was like, I'll run a little bit more of an Eastern style campaign. We'll be. You're all gonna be ninjas. You're level 1. You're on the eve of your level 2 advancement training, whatever. So session 1, you'll do a training, and then you'll level 2, and then But in feudal Japan, there was you had these ninja villages where these people would go to this area and train, and I was like, okay, so you got to show up with your character who is going to be a level 1 ninja, and you need to tell me about like what you do in the town. You do something for the town, or you know some people, or give me something. We'll build this village together, and we'll make it a thing. And then for the first like I said, these campaigns are long, and for the first like 3 months, you're going through and you're doing little things. Oh, this guy in town wants you to go do this thing for him, and oh, the ninja master wants you to do this, and oh, you're making friends in town, and you're going off and having little adventures. Your clan is designed to like defeat demons, come back to town, burned to the ground, everybody's dead. And I'm like, this is where I was originally going to start the quest, but you are the last surviving members of an ancient ninja clan sworn to defend the empire. And then it was just like, I wanted to start it where every 80s ninja video game began, but I wanted you to really care about all these dead people around you. Everybody that they knew. Roll D6.
Yeah.
On a D6 he's alive. On a D6 he's missing. Anything else he's dead. Family, friends, kids, whatever. I don't care.
Family, friends, kids. That's a 3-sided dice.
Whatever you got. Roll D6. Anybody who does, if you don't roll 6, they're dead.
But you only gave me a D3.
Yeah.
I know.
This is first edition D&D. Suck it up. This is how this works.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the things I don't necessarily like about 5th Ed is because every edition in D&D up to 5e, your first few level, and
a lot of powers. I mean, you start out in 5th edition, your first level character is like a 3rd or 4th level character in first edition.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even 3rd edition was a little less squishy than 1st and 2nd edition, but still way more squishy than 5th Ed is.
So the way we're going to start, and are you comfortable with me talking about the beginning of this adventure? Because I think it's pretty cool. So the way
I think it's super cool, and I'm proud of it.
The way this module starts is a way that one of your friends had kind of come up with many years
Bill
ago.
Stewart in high school came up with this concept. And I played it twice, and I told it to Ben, and Ben's like, okay,
We're doing this.
Yeah.
So the story starts with like you're level 1 character,
Mm-hmm.
no items or equipment, no money.
Yeah.
You just level 1 with no gear, and it starts as like gnolls have however you've gotten you're in a cart you've been captured by gnolls. There's this big train of like people from you're in kind of like this frontier land, and they've all been
Planet of the Apes. You're in a cage.
You're in a cage, and the people who like the people of the village are in the line, and there's gnolls everywhere, and you're going down this road, and there's this one cart, and they've kind of collected the people who look like slightly more effective than the others, right? Like maybe they're just going to eat these other people, but like you guys are probably going to be enslaved until you die. Okay, so you guys are all in this cage together, and that's the player character party. And then the cart hits a bump, falls over, breaks.
What do you do?
Roll initiative, right?
Yeah.
Run!
You're running literally naked.
They're running after you. They're releasing hyenas after you. They're shooting arrows at you. I'm rolling a bunch of dice. Oh, nothing hit, but
Ben,
like...
we have some art.
Oh, we have a picture of that.
Yes.
Maybe hold it up to the camera.
Yeah, here we go.
That's the art of it. And yeah, so... And that's it. And so the first basically module is because you are pretty powerful at 5th edition at level 1, but like we don't give you a chance to rest because you're being pursued by these guys.
Yeah.
So you don't get that like rest and get all your hit points and your spells back. You got no weapons or equipment, and there's this very like it kind of goes to what we were talking about of wanting to have this very gritty, very realistic feel to it of like, okay, you need food and water, you got no weapons and equipment. And the idea being...
You have no clothes either.
Got no clothes. Yeah, you're wearing like ratty clothes that you, like whatever's left of what you were wearing. You've been in that cage for a long time. You have to roll... First thing you do is roll a fortitude save or a constitution save to make sure you're not exhausted or dehydrated or whatever. And yeah, so that first adventure, you're going through the woods, and like at the end of that adventure, you're wearing like a wolf's head as like and you're carrying a stick and a rock, you know, and you're crazed and you're covered in blood and dirt, and you're just like, rah, you know, but like... It very quickly forms the bond between the party, and you've got this stick that you've sharpened with a knife, and you feel very proud of it, you know, and it does a D4 because it's an improvised weapon, but like you feel awesome about it.
I've got a pointier stick than everyone else,
and I can throw this rock if anything gets too close.
Yeah, and then there's all about food gathering, hunting, predators that are circling, because in one of the sections there's dire wolves that show up.
Yeah, these wolves start tracking you.
We drew this one too.
Yes, wolves start tracking you, and they're smarter and they're bigger. They're like a type of wolf that was like bred for war, but they've escaped and now they've reproduced in the wild.
And they're like three times bigger than a normal.
And less hairy, so they're not everybody. I've played tested this 5 times, so everybody ends up skinning the wolves and wearing them out of that forest, you know, and that's great. That's what we want. That's the feel we want for these adventures of
It's fun.
You want to go down to the basics of what...
Need a big number for it, but like it's something that once you hit 3rd level, you don't think about anymore. You're not going to be like, I got to hunt a rabbit with a bow and arrow. Like, I'm a 3rd level warrior. I should be able to manage that. I don't even roll for it.
You don't keep track of cash to buy something.
You don't keep track of your food. You don't keep track.
Exactly.
Yeah, you get to a town at this, and you have no money, and you got to borrow some money, or you got to steal something. You get $0 when you get there, and you're not going to be able to trade this sharpened stick for like food, right? You got to get.
I can sharpen sticks better than anybody else out here. Let me tell you.
Great, I'll give you a copper for the day if you sharpen all of these sticks.
Right.
You're like, well, that's a start.
It's a thing that you will beyond day 2 of this adventure you see setting.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love about right now, because like we said before, you know, the 90s was a big period for RPGs, then the bubble burst. And now I don't think we're really in a bubble per se, just it's become more acceptable that anybody can play. Yeah. And now you've got tons of people that are making content. So you can really find the game that you want to play, or you can find a setting within a game that you want to play. Because as big as 5e is, I mean, you can find pretty much anything you want to play. If you want to play super high magic, you can do that. You want to play little to no magic, you can do that. And then people are,
a lot of it's free, and we want to try to sell this, not for a lot, but we want to try to make some money for all the effort and work that we're putting into it. And like, you have to provide something that isn't out there.
Yes.
Right? And like being able to do old school style with old school art and old school, like from...
Yeah, I'll give him middle school art, because he's not old school, and he's definitely not the
old
new
school style. I'm not calling Brian Snoddy old. I definitely am not saying that. But
I am old.
Oh, you're not that old.
I'm old enough to be Ben's dad, which is very
That is-
scary.
Not true. You're the same age as my older brother.
Yeah, but your older
That's
brother's 18
John.
years older than you. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, that's true, though. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you guys are starting off in a place where I talk to game designers all the time. What gets games with amazing art? What is it? L5R that Fantasy Flight released a few years back. Looks beautiful. I mean, it is a gorgeous looking game.
I
But
worked on the original of that.
yeah, and L5R has always been gorgeous. And their most current
You're
one,
welcome.
but their most current one, they used their edge system that they had been using in Star Wars, and it just didn't work in the L5R setting. Now, I'm thankful that they're recycling that gorgeous book to be a 5e. So they worked with Wizards to go, okay, we're going to strip out our system. We're going to put 5e in here, and it's going to.
That's weird. Okay.
But I love that. I love that they're going to recycle, because that game. I know a ton of people that own that book because it is gorgeous. I mean, you open it up. I mean, the art all throughout that fantasy. Because I struggle trying to get small game designers to, I'm like, don't cheap out on the art. At least get some good pieces that match the aesthetic. Because I've also seen games that, man, the art is gorgeous. This makes zero sense with the game that you have.
I can't understand these rules if there's any of them here.
Yeah, well, but it's serious, and they have cartoony art. You're like, oh, I love this art, and then you're like, this art makes no sense with with what you've written for a setting and everything. And weirdly, people might pick it up because they love the great cartoony art, and then they just never play because they're turned off because the setting doesn't match. Because I ran into Ben and Brian at Jet City weekend before. Grit City, excuse me. Yes. Yeah, it used to be Jet City, now it's Grit City. But ran into them at Grit City, and they had a table together and got to see a bunch of the art that they were showing off for that Brian's held up with the camera. That we're on a 480p potato webcam or whatever it is.
Potato web.
But the art matches that art. You'll never sell your product, or you're at least always fighting an uphill battle. And then if your art doesn't match the aesthetics of the game, you lose players because they'll have bought it and they'll be like, I just don't want to play. Because it's amazing how.
At a convention in San Antonio, Texas, with
Oh, thank you.
an unnamed company whose last name happened to be Jackson. In the we were doing like a forum. It was Sandy Peterson and I. Okay, it was Steve Jackson, and we're in like a discussion thing and talking about game design and stuff because Sandy Peterson did all that Cthulhu stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Civilization video games and stuff. By the way, Sandy, you still owe me a Tom Waits album. Because I sent you that Iron Maiden album, and you owe me it. If I didn't have to pay my artists, I could pay my game designers twice what I pay them now. I said, okay, Steve, and I just went off on him like an atomic warbag. And started yelling. Okay, I didn't really yell and scream at him, but they have to have a visualization of what they're getting into. At least a cover.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have interior stuff, give them a cover shot of what they're getting into. I think that's super important.
Yeah.
If you don't do that,
even romance novels, right? Like,
Okay.
a lot of money into the cover, right?
I will give it to you. Right now, what got me into Conan the Barbarian books, covers, Frank Frazetta.
Yeah.
There were no interior.
I ended up reading.
Comparing myself to Frazetta, by the way. I'm not going down that far.
I picked up the Myth Adventures book because of Phil Folio's art. He did the covers for the Myth Adventures books, not the original ones, but I think the third run of them or something. And I was like, ooh.
I had a whole Magic deck that was just like it was like
Art,
the deck that I
yeah.
used. I had a white deck that I used, but I had the other colors that I wasn't really using that much. But I
Yeah.
was like, I love all of this art. I'm not gonna trade it because I'm gonna trade these cards because I like the art too much, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna find a way to make these work just because I think they look cool, even though they're not good. You know?
Exactly. Oh, well, that's part of the reason why I love Commander is because people are finding old cards that were pretty much worthless that work in this entirely other
Oh,
format.
yeah.
You're like, okay, I can have 99 cards. Let me find things that yeah. And you're like, oh man, that card actually won me games because and it's a card that was worthless for years until the Commander format.
I had one that I loved, and it was a dwarf deck. It was a red dwarf deck, and it was all dwarves. And I loved dwarves at the time. I was running a dwarf character, and I loved dwarves. And so I got every card that this was like 4th edition, I guess. I had every card that was in existence that had the word dwarf in it in the deck. And that
Wasn't many for a long
It
time.
wasn't that many, but there was enough, right?
Yeah,
there was
barely.
The one that was like the dwarf like pony tamer, and there was
Yep.
like all these weird ones that nobody would have ever used. A lot of like 1/1, 1 red
Yeah.
creatures, and I put out a mana flare, and I put out a fire breathing, and so the dwarf warrior can make anybody with 2 or less power unblockable.
Swing
So-
in, pump them up.
So yeah, so I would make this deck, and everybody be laughing at me because I have all these mana flares, all these dwarves all over the place, and no clear intent on what the heck was happening. And then at some point, I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna fire breathe this guy, make him unblockable, and deal 25 damage to you. And I was
Like, did I just get beaten up by a dwarven pony? Why, yes, you did.
Pony, yeah, Storm Pony, all these little like nobody. I was like trading for like cards that were just completely random. Like I didn't. Even know
For
I had
years,
this.
I
What
had
do you want
people.
for this? I didn't even know I had that.
I was like, hey, do you have any plague rats? So I have like
Oh, God,
I have
yeah.
like 300 plague rats from like Alphabet and Unlimited, still because they were like, yeah, I got a plague rat. Like, yeah, I've got 2. Okay, okay, trade's good now. They're like,
We're doing something like that with goblins currently. So we've
Well,
got
we're on a goblin
yeah. So we're working on these modules, and that's going to be kind of the end product. But we've been kind of doing this YouTube channel for a while, and if you guys want to check it out, it's youtube.com/Dungeon Mastery with a Y, and we just kind of were like, Brian would paint something cool, and I'd write a little thing for it, or I'd write a thing, and Brian would paint a painting for it, and we're just little magic items, little characters, little NPCs, things like that we've been kind of scenarios, little things like that, and we've decided we're going to put them all together and produce them as these packets because that seems like a little bit more coherent way to like put all these things out. But all these modules we're making most of them are including a lot of little taverns we made. Brian will paint a tavern sign, and I'll write about a little tavern or a little piece of magic equipment or item or whatever. But one thing that we decided we loved was goblins. And so there are a number of goblin paintings. And you were talking about being a history guy, but we have like a goblin like Thracian gladiator, and he's standing there with the Thracian helmet, and Brian has painted all of the art for a lot of the art for my historical books, and it's all historically accurate. He's got the correct the bladed weapon and the helmet, and he's standing there with this ogre head, and everybody's like throwing like it's amazing. We have one where he's a hussars, which were like lancers that rode on horseback, and they had these wings that came up behind them, and apparently like they could charge, and the wings would make noise, and it was like this terrifying sound of them charging. They're the most bad. Like the Poles get a hard time because they attacked panzers with cavalry, but like it's because they for 500 years had the most badass cavalry on earth, and like
They're for sale.
Yes. You're like, oh, you wanna pay our hussars a lot of money? Go for it. Go off and fight the who?
There is another. Napoleon had a ton of Poles. A lot of his cavalry corps was Polish hussars. But there's another story from Polish history which Brian drew for the first Badass book, which is that
the bear.
Yeah, the Second Corps of Polish Artillery found a little bear, and they raised him to be a bigger bear, and then at the Battle of Monte Cassino, Wojtek the bear was carrying artillery shells from the trucks to the guns.
Yes.
And so he's now like on the art for the Second Corps or the 22nd Transport Company of the Second Polish Corps or whatever.
Rank, he got more rations. He also had a beer and alcohol ration.
Yes, he
Apparently,
could
he
smoke a
never
cigarette.
dropped a single round.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, because they had just they found him in Syria as a pet. Some kid had him as a pet, and they traded that kid for like, I'm getting kind of deep diving into this, but it was like, Poland was kind of in the middle, like the non-aggression pact between Germany and between Hitler and Stalin was like, let's like not kill each other, let's just kill Poland first, and then we'll fight each other. And so they both just killed Poland, and these guys had escaped, and they were kind of refugees, and they found this little refugee bear, and they raise him, and can't come, only enlisted soldiers. So they enlisted him into the army, so he got a rank and all that stuff, and he was getting a paycheck.
Yep.
That's the very first picture I ever drew for your book.
Yeah, it's in this one. I'll find it. But so our goblin winged hussar is riding on a very small brown bear.
Nice.
Like a little bear.
I love sneaking goblins into, and Wojciech, yeah. And then it was funny because somebody goes, F it. They're trying to bribe this guy, and then he was like, F it. He wasn't accept anything. And then he pull out copper, and they was like, ooh, copper. And they were like, really, 2 gaming sessions, and all we need to do is bribe him with copper. He's like, gold was worthless to the goblin. He just thought copper was way cooler. So and nobody carries copper. Nobody carries copper anything.
No.
So
Nobody
exactly. So you throw in something weird like that, where somebody has info, and being a goblin, I can make it that he likes copper just because copper shines, has a different shine to it, and to him it's not as common because everybody always has gold and silver and platinum. Nobody has copper, so copper obviously is worth more.
We ran a goblin quest once. Like my little nephew came in.
Yes.
Not little, he's taller than me, but my nephew came from the Virgin Islands, and he really wanted to play D&D. He was like 15 or 16. And so we decided we were going to play an adventure, and he was like, I want to be a drow assassin.
Right here at this table.
At this table. He's like, I want to be a drow assassin. And I was like, well, that makes sense. And then we were like, all right, everybody else is going to be goblins. And you're like a drow and you're goblins. And somebody stole the goblin king, like some adventurers came and beat up the goblins and stole the king's crown. And now you guys got to go get it back from these adventurers that stole the crown.
Good friend in the military.
It was 90 minutes.
The World War I style hussar. And my brother played like the gladiator. And our friend Brian Lum played the winged hussar.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
Had a friend who I was in the military, got him like, hey, let's play. And he was like, but I want to play a goblin. He'd never played before. So I was like, yeah. So he's playing this goblin like over the top. His name was Volvo Beige Esquire.
Of course.
And then he wore fezzes. So we started making magical fezzes for him. So they could use him as a mace. Another one, they could grab the tassel, spin him around, and he would like stick to a wall. Then you could climb up the tassel. So he just had this bag.
Funny.
He just had bags of like a fez. Like, what do we need? He would just put on the fez that was needed at that time. So he started collecting these magical fezzes that we were making for him.
Do you have the mug?
Yes, I
Is it over
do.
there?
Hold on a second. And I also
Got a goblin
have
mug?
one of the other original paintings.
Mm.
Okay. So here's the. And I'll grab the other thing.
This is the goblin Thracian here. I don't know if it's very easy to see without putting it a little closer to the.
Oh, I love it. That is awesome.
A little closer to the.
Hussar.
Oh, hold it up.
Yeah, somebody
took a
bought this already, but they just hadn't picked it up yet.
He took a.
Oh, I love that.
Sure.
Man,
Sure.
the Germans from World War I had like the craziest, most awesome headgear.
Yes. So this is based off a real dude.
Fur
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He was a German general, and I can't think of his name all of a sudden. But I used to know all about that German general. World War I. Yeah, they had it bonkers.
He was the oldest surviving hussar at the time.
Yeah, so goblins to be
Yeah.
human sized on a goblin.
I brought that picture up of the real gentleman dressed like that, and I was like, why don't we have headgear like this in the military anymore? Like,
Do you know the story about why that headgear existed?
I used to.
It's because it's supposed to make you look bigger to be
Yeah.
more intimidating to people. Also, like if they want to shoot you in the head, you've got so much more hair.
Yeah, like
I have a friend who's in the Coldstream Guards band, and they do the changing of the guard at the Buckingham Palace
Yeah.
and stuff. And those guys they still wear the big helmet, the
Yep.
big hats.
I was in the honor guard in Washington D.C., so I did the American version of that. So
Okay.
I did funeral details in Arlington National Cemetery,
Oh, wow.
and I did like Reagan's funeral, did Bush's
Wow.
inauguration, stuff like that. So
Wow.
Dang.
Yeah.
Well, this guy was talking about because they have the big big black hats, right?
Yeah.
And they're bear skin and they're bear fur, and they still are today. You still got to be real. So they kill brown bears and they dye their fur black and make the hats out of it.
Yeah. Basically, somebody in Scotland, the Scots are trying to reintroduce wolves to Scotland, and people down in England are like, look, they no longer live here. They haven't for 400 years. Like, nothing in the British Isles is about having wolves, and we have no natural predators here anymore other than humans, and that's why we can go for a walk.
Scots are natural predators.
Yeah. But that's why you go to England, you go to Scotland, you can go take a walk anywhere and not be worried about and getting attacked by anything besides maybe all you have to worry about is traffic.
The wolf packs might not attack you, but
Yeah.
they're gonna eat your dog or your cat
So,
or whatever.
Back in the 90s, I used to teach search and rescue, and I was up in the mountains here in Washington going over a spot we were going to do some land nav. We'd done it, and I get to one of our spots, and I've got everything out on a map, and I'm running through it, and I hear a noise behind me. I turn around. There's a freaking mountain lion running full bore at me. And at this point, it's like, nothing I can do. So I'm just there. And he stops right next to me and then starts nuzzling me. And I just reach down and I just start petting this. And then my buddy, after telling his story.
I'm buying a lottery ticket today. And
I've expended all my luck. Between all the times I should have died and all the karma points I spent on finding my wife, I'll never be able to win the lotto. But telling my friend about that and saying we need to find another place, he goes, you need new underwear? I was like, oh yeah, being nuzzled by a mountain lion.
okay, I'm not going to draw that.
No, yeah.
You'll paint it.
Yeah, being nuzzled by a mountain lion, that you half a second prior, you're like, oh God, this thing's going to murder me. Yeah. I'm 19 years old, like, I can't fight off a mountain lion.
Our friend Dan, Dan was a playtester on First Edition Pathfinder. He used to work at Wizards. He's doing the design for Todd Lockwood's new book.
Okay.
So he's a cool guy. He's a good friend of ours, and he tells a funny story about his dad was stationed out here, kind of in the wilderness. Was it in Alaska?
Yeah, it was
with
in
the
Alaska.
bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was
3 bears.
It was in Alaska, and he was like. Apparently, it was like, that was like the time that your dad killed a bear. And Dan's like, what? And he's like, yeah. Or no, the dad was like, oh, that was like the time I killed a bear. And Dan's like a grown man, right? And he's like, what? And he was like, yeah. He was like, we were cooking this BLT sandwich. You got to take care of this. And he was like, all right. So I went and shot the bear, and that was the end of it. And he was like, and that was the first time I killed a bear. And Dan's like, wait, you've killed a bear more than once? He's like, yeah. He was like, there was another time. What's the story?
I still have one of the photographs.
We were making this BLT sandwich. This fucking bear came in the window.
I've only run into a bear once in the wild. Like, came to a clearing, and this bear like sticks his head out of like the tree line and sees me. I see it, and he goes, nope, and he just leaves. Like, the bear is down here. Well, we're starting to get yeah, I've seen one bear in the wild. He looked at me, I looked at him, and he was like, nope, human, I'm gone.
Yeah, that's a good call. For
the only wildlife that was like truly nearly killed me was a moose.
Those are crazy. They're way bigger than you think they're going to be.
Yeah, moose killed.
Like 7 feet tall.
Oh yeah.
Shoulders.
Yeah. Well, and this one, so I'm just.
They're like dinosaurs.
Yeah, just blindly, and I just come out of, like, it was all small trees, maybe a year or two old. And I turn and put my back to a tree. He slams into it, launches me off of this tree. Like, would have murdered me.
You were able to run after a moose launch?
Yeah. Well, I think I was already running in the air, and then I just hit the ground and kept going. Yeah, it was like a cartoon.
It was feather fall.
Because like as soon as he snorted, I was like, "This isn't good." And he comes running at me. I'm maybe and I had a bruise from where that tree down my back.
There's a comic I love, and it's like, I don't know if it's Perry Bible Fellowship, but it's something along those lines, and it's just like, it's that scene from Jurassic Park where they're looking at the brontosauruses, and he's like, don't worry, they're herbivores, they won't hurt us. And it cuts to like an elephant mauling a dude, and then like a hippo biting a dude, and like a bull like goring a matador, and then it comes back and the brontosaurus is just like,
Creatures get very territorial, and we forget about that. And it's funny because going back to UK, I've had friends from the UK that have. No, Australia has like more venomous things than we do.
Yeah, like a spider that'll bite you.
Like a tree that'll sting you.
Yeah, jellyfish. Everything.
Leaf over there.
Yeah,
If you
it'll
lick it, you're dead.
yeah.
It's called the stinging
Whereas
tree.
we have like slowly from venom, whereas here you'll die moderately quick in agonizing horrible pain while being
they'll
mauled
just
to death
rip
by
you
yeah.
apart.
So we're talking about the history stuff again. Like I did one of my guts and gold muster rolls and all of these things,
Yeah.
this primary source stuff, and it was like all of these people are dying of consumption, which is tuberculosis, right?
Yeah.
The tuberculosis eats up your lungs and you die. But the first time I came across that, I was like, what were these 12 guys consumed by? Like, what ate them?
Consumption.
They
Like,
were killed by consumption, but what?
well, going back and playing what is it? Oregon Trail. I feel sorry for every character I ever killed of dysentery after having gotten
yeah.
dysentery. I got dysentery in Afghanistan, and
Yeah,
I lost 20 pounds in 10 days and got back to a main
It's
installation.
bad.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, the doctor's like, oh, I'm surprised you're alive.
Dehydration.
Yeah. And then it's like, I'm thinking of all the characters I've killed in Oregon Trail. And
The
then,
internet now that talks about poop all the time.
well, that'd
Guy
be
with
most of the
beard
internet.
and the hat or whatever.
Anybody. Like,
Yeah.
that's the majority of the humor
Yeah.
on the internet right
That's
now.
Couple years
Yeah.
are nothing compared to
Yeah.
what our ancestors went through.
This is the thing
yeah.
as a history book.
And dysentery, I mean, so many things can cause it. There's a bazillion different. If you get really bad dysentery, it will mess you up. And like, I can't eat spinach. Spinach is. It's funny the things that again killed all our ancestors horribly. We survive. And
As a, like a history book writer, a question I get a lot when I do these things is like, oh, what time period would you go back to? No, none. Never.
Because as soon as you pop out of the time machine, you're.
In any reality, in any timeline other than now, right? Like
Yeah.
I get sick and I would have died early. Like
why-
Classic ancient Greece. I might want to go back to that.
I go visit, but I want to come back. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, I want to come home and diseases and stuff. And like you get sick, right? And people just you got sick and you died. You cut your leg and you died, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing I do. Like you were talking about George Martin earlier, and like
Yeah.
that's one thing I like about him, where it's just like this guy. Khal Drogo gets cut and his wound hit his head and he died.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't revive him, right? He was the king and they couldn't
yes.
revive him.
Tomatoes, when tomatoes first got brought to Europe, they were killing people, and everybody goes, oh, it's because they're from the nightshade family. It's like, no, because the people, the acid releases the lead in the pewter, and they're dying of lead poisoning. So
really?
yeah, so that's why tomatoes were. It's because you were putting acidic things onto pewter plates, releasing the lead, and you're ingesting lead saturated food and dying of lead poisoning. And it was enough that you would die of it instead of slowly going insane like the Romans did.
Well, that killed a bunch of American Indians too, because
Yeah.
they would buy and they'd paint themselves with it.
Yeah.
And they died because of lead poisoning.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, and the people selling it didn't know
They didn't
either.
know.
Yeah. Because we didn't understand lead poisoning until, many hundreds of years later of any of these.
Look, in friggin' like it was like 1920, and the dude who was just like who came up with the idea that like, hey, we should wash our hands between surgeries,
Yeah.
got the freaking Nobel Prize in medicine.
My hands with soap before I come back. Okay. A couple minutes.
Don't forget to leave your mic here.
I'm gonna leave my mic here so you won't hear the peeing noise.
The screaming from the
Calm down.
when we started these before I left for Ukraine. So 2020 is when we really started doing stuff like this, because we're like, oh, hey, we're not going to events. What can we do? So we started doing stuff like this, and I'd be able to, Zoom call with somebody, and there's good advice that comes out of these, because people, oh, I can do a Kickstarter. Can you?
Dude, Seattle Magazine wrote an article about how badly I messed up my Kickstarter. So like I was in the local magazine for having screwed up my Kickstarter so badly.
Yeah. and it's easy to do, because when you're going into it, you there's a ton of resources out there, but they're all really counterintuitive at times. You read, you got to do it this way. No, you can't do it that way. It's
So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like
and for some people, they run a successful Kickstarter, and then the back end is what screws them.
that's what happened to
Yeah.
me. So
That's what does it for a lot of people. When you're doing books, finding the right printing with, you've got to get your print
time
sent
changed,
to
the way
yeah,
carrier.
exactly. And then you wait a week or two to get your example to you, and you're like, oh, the layout's totally wrong. So that just adds so
Takes
much.
a week to fix it. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, for me, like, so we got I made a deck of playing cards, regular playing cards, but they were all badasses from history. They're available on my website, badassoftheweek.com, if you want to go check it out. I've got a whole garage full of them that I can get to you in a week and a half, I promise. But we wanted to do a deck of regular, ordinary playing cards, but each suit was a different part of the world with a different artist. And
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, so the idea would be kings were actual kings, queens were actual queens, eights were all crazy people, and so like
Crazy eights. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So we had we did a deck of playing cards. Brian actually painted all of we changed
Throwing stars.
Yeah, we changed the diamonds into throwing stars.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was the Asia set. So he did.
Yeah.
You know, we have Tamerlane and Genghis Khan. We have a whole
It's Chinggis.
Khan. Like I always was just kind of like.
Go to Mongolia.
No, I
it's
know.
Chinggis everywhere.
I know.
Yeah.
I know that's right. I know it's right.
But no one knows
it's
that,
hard.
and it's the French. The French effed up the C
Hey,
to a G.
I know it's hard,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna.
I have a Western accent, and there's no disrespect with the pronunciation. I'm just saying I can't say it that way. That's all.
I only pointed out just because I've been to Mongolia, and it's just one of those weird history things that like. We all say Genghis Khan, but it's like no, it's Chinggis. Like, and people are like, and I always love like, how do you know that? Well, would you like to go land at Chinggis Khan International Airport in Ulaanbaatar? I've been there. I've had Chinggis beer. I've had Chinggis vodka. I've been to the multi-story tall.
Yeah, that's a part.
Like my friend went there for the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
And he was my old roommate in college. John, if you're listening, I don't imagine you
Mongolia
are.
is awesome.
But he went to Mongolia in the Peace Corps, and they were staying at some house before they got deployed to wherever they were going to go to the countryside, and there was this refrigerator down in this dark basement, and they open it, and there's one unmarked, like this, it's Steel Reserve. It's a tall boy is Steel Reserve, but it's so old that most of the label is melted off. It's like unreadable. The only thing readable on it is steel. It's just this aluminum can with the word steel like very faded. And so I was following his blog because we were friends, and he was writing on his live journal or whatever the fuck at the time. And like I'm reading it, and he was like, I swear to you, as I was typing this story, this old Mongolian man came up behind me and looked over my shoulder at the computer and said, "So, you must be the man they call Steel." And it's the greatest thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life, and I'm trying to not cry.
The people were awesome. I would love to go back to Mongolia because I want to experience more.
He met his wife there,
But
he loved it.
the food is horrible. It is the worst country I've been to for food. It's mutton, lard, potatoes, and carrots, and then like no spices.
Actually, that sounds kind of good.
No, there's no spices.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and if you've had mutton with no spices,
The word yak.
yeah, they do eat yak, but it's because they get a lot of the
Yak
hair
milk,
for their
isn't there like the
the fermented mare's milk, so horse's milk.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
It's like day old yogurt with a chaser of turpentine. It is horrible.
Whoa.
It is horrible, and then they make it into
Now,
popsicles.
did they put that in a shot glass for you with the?
Oh no, they put it into a cup. They just
drink it straight out of the mare.
it is not tasty. They make it's alcoholic.
My pudding
But it's like old yogurt and turpentine, and you will get drunk off of them because you're eating. They're horrible.
Did Cosby import those kind of pudding?
He imported other things for his pudding pops.
I got my roofies and duct tape and pudding pops from Mongolia.
But the people there
All the
are
talents
awesome.
in it.
I love because half the country is still nomadic, and if you break down in the middle of nowhere, at 2:00 in the morning, you can go knock on the door of a ger, and they'll open it up, they'll give you a place to stay, wake up in the morning, they'll feed you, get your vehicle going, and then give you a gift for visiting. Like the nicest people ever.
Wow.
I technically own a Mongolian handmade bow, but I can't afford to ship it because shipping things in and out of Mongolia is nuts because they've got to go through China or Russia. And as soon as something,
Both bad options, yeah.
yeah. Well, and so like I was gonna send some bags, me $2,500 to ship like 4 empty bags to Mongolia.
You need another one?
If you're up.
All right.
shipping there because it all has to go through China or Russia, and they just jack up the rates on everything.
I know you gotta pay double tariffs, right? Because like wherever they go into.
Oh, China, yeah. Well, that's part of the reason why it's so expensive. You know, Mongolia doesn't charge you anything. They're excited to get products in, but
exactly.
you know, China and Russia, they both want access to Mongolia, and Mongolia does a lot of partnership with the U.S. just to say hey, visit and take it as carry on.
My buddy Phil last year sent me this video of these Mongolian heavy metal.
The Who, HU.
Yes.
Yep.
And they're like motorcycle dudes
Yep.
too and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
and then they do a bit of throat singing.
They do the
Yes.
first
And
thing,
and
Yeah.
if you, oh man, I got to
I didn't
experience.
know they were called the Who, but I've seen them before.
Yep, it's the Who, HU. They're great.
Is there an umlaut on the U?
Well, when you look it up, like on,
Swedish.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do with the diacritical. Sometimes it's weird with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when you look them up, it's just you just look up the Who, HU, and you'll find them. But having
Oscar
been in a
Joe,
Roo,
but they were American.
Yeah.
They had the umlauts.
I thought
the same.
yeah, Europe just calls North America the Americas, or North and South America, like the USA,
New World, whatever.
Yeah.
The
New World.
The New World. Yeah.
But yeah, having been in a room with actual like throat singing, it is so weird because you feel it, and you're standing next to the person like I have no clue how.
My friend Phil, his girlfriend, she listens to this Danish kind of throat singing kind of.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And it sounds. I said, "Is that Mongolian heavy metal?" But she's like, "No, they're Danish."
It's like this is yodeling actually.
Thinking, well,
Yeah, I can't yodel
kind of
either.
the same.
Yeah, they're doing death metal yodeling.
Yeah, they're doing black metal, and
I'm
then
sure
they're
that
doing,
exists.
they're doing
Oh my God.
motorcycle metal over here.
I love digging into the weird worlds of metal because you'll find some great stuff. But
There's enough crossover
yeah.
between German metal and German yodeling.
Out of
that, like,
Finland,
geographically, that it
yeah.
must exist.
out of Finland, I listen to a bunch of folk metal. There's a guy.
Oh, the
yeah.
Finns are
Yeah.
weirder than.
Oh yeah. The Sweden, I stay away from because it's like they love death metal. There's a guy out of
I
Norway.
don't like death metal.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of death metal, but like most other metal, there's medieval metal that's all the rage in Germany.
I'm kinda into
Yeah, the
that,
Vikings.
Yeah, some of the pirate metal I love, but there's a guy out of Norway. Yeah, Ailstorm's a lot of fun. Frog Leap Studios, Leo. Every week he does a metal cover of something, and his first one he did was like a Lady Gaga song. And it got like 1 million views in a week, and he was like, "Well, I know what I'm doing every week now."
Yeah, this is my life now forever.
Yeah, he does like there's a group out of South Africa called Diantword, who rappers
they did a what's it called
District
Chappie.
Yeah, they were in Chappie.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are.
Yeah,
It's rough.
It's
rough.
it is bizarre. Some of their stuff I love just because it's super bizarre and weird, but they rap over electronic music. But he does
enjoy this rap.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
I'm a big melodic
Brian's a-
metal
Yeah.
stuff. I'm a big Ronnie James Dio.
Brian likes Ronnie James Dio. He can go with Megadeth. He can go with some Iron Maiden.
love Megadeth.
Iron Maiden.
Yeah, Brett,
Yeah, I love Iron
When
Maiden.
we go to
Judas
the
Priest.
when we go to
Yeah.
UG's, he karaoke.
But look up
Doctor by UFO.
Yes, I do.
look up Frog Leap because he. Oh, I'm not. He's been doing it for like 5 years. He does one every week, and then he also out of I think it's out of Denmark. There's a metal cruise that goes on like every year. So you can go hop on a boat for a week and travel around Scandinavia and everything, and like every night there's a metal concert. And he'll be on.
Can we go to that, Ben?
I do think there's like an important it's kind of
I want to do gaming cruises. I would love that.
that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Gaming Viking metal death cruises with the Who.
Ben and Brian.
That would be, that's a very
Ben and
niche
Brian.
thing.
Yes.
Look, no, it's something for everybody. So when you go on this
The Lido deck is for RPGs. The poop deck is
we all kind of fit into one
choose
of
what
these
you want.
categories.
You want to play board games, or you want to go you want to go LARP as a metal
What are you
band?
going to headbang?
But I do think there's something to be said here for like. Did you know him? Is he a friend of yours, or is he just a guy you follow?
Just somebody that I stumbled across, like 4 or 5 years ago as he was getting big, and just freaking love what he does, and his work ethic is bonkers.
Right. So this is what I want to talk about, right? Which is just that like this is a really good lesson for like creators and people who want to create games and create art and
Oh,
create things like that. It's
Actually
just like,
work?
this dude is producing a thing every week,
And still runs a studio on top of that.
but he hit on a thing that worked, and it's just like that's a lot of. It's like a lot of. I feel like a lot of creating art is that like that monkeys on typewriters producing the works of Shakespeare thing. Where it's just make stuff, right? Like people always like whenever I talk to people who want to like make things, they're nervous. Oh, what if somebody doesn't like it? Oh, it's not perfect yet. Oh, it's not quite what I want. I'm not sure. Just gonna get that hit. You're never gonna get that. I'll make a Beyonce metal cover with throat singing, and now I got 1 million views on YouTube. Like that doesn't happen if you won't have like. And we were talking earlier about being a little bit afraid of like people not liking your stuff, people putting a lot of hateful shit out on your comment section on whatever.
People will always hate what you're doing.
Yes,
but
every new thing. Like, so this is the thing I always talk about. So I do a lot of talks at schools.
Someone's going to love what you're doing.
Right. I always do these talks at schools, and it's just like whatever the thing is. So when I'm talking to like a 10th grade class about Guts and Glory stuff or about writing, it's like. Think about your favorite movie ever, or your favorite song ever, your favorite band, your favorite whatever, your favorite book, anything. Somebody hates it. Somebody that you know hates it. And it's just like, you gotta like let go of that because you gotta just produce stuff and make things and people will like it or they won't, but you don't hit upon that random gold of like death metal covers of Beyonce songs.
Yeah.
If you don't put that out there. You could sit on that for 20 years and never produce it, and then you never know.
And that is the hardest thing.
You missed your window, right?
Yeah, and you will always get rejection. Todd McFarlane. So I met Todd McFarlane at a Tacoma Tigers game back when Spawn was getting ready to release, and it was the second time I met him because he's sitting behind me in the stands, and my family has a comic book store. And I keep looking over my shoulder, and he's like, "Can I help you?" I was like, "You look really familiar." And he's like, "Oh, Todd McFarlane." I was like, "You drew on Coyote." And he's like, "Wait, that's what you remember?" Because the first time I met him, so he has saved all 400 of his rejection letters from trying to get into the comic book industry back in the day. And he was at the booth where they were showing off Coyote, and his job was basically to draw the trees and the rocks and stuff. He was, the background artist. But
well familiar with
everybody,
all this stuff.
Everybody was talking to the lead artist and the writer, and I talked to him, and I don't think I'd ever met anybody so excited to just be in the industry. And
That's awesome,
he got so many rejection letters, but
he doesn't project that much. So I'm really interested to hear that about him. Because,
and
I always think of him as kind of being
fairly different. But I mean, this is after decades of success. But it was funny because that was I always have that memory of him just being his first gig, and that was his first one of his first shows going to. And here's a kid that likes comics who's wanting to talk to him about what he does. And I just draw I draw the clouds, I draw the ground, I draw the rocks. And it's like I'm like, that's super awesome. And it's like just was so excited about that. And he thought it was funny that of all the work that he's done, I remember where he started, not where he was, most well known. And then he signed a copy of
My own name.
Yeah. So if you ever see a Tacoma Tigers ticket stub from the '90s
That's Todd McFarlane's signature.
Todd McFarlane, that you snatch it up. That's mine.
Okay.
Because I know he didn't sign anybody else's that day.
So it's funny because I was Mike Grell's background artist for several years, and Todd McFarlane loaned him the money to do his first comic for Image, which was Shaman's Tears, and I was the background artist for that.
Nice, yeah, and
Todd
everybody's got
to call the studio, and I'd pick it up and talk to him. I never met him face to face. I talked to him on the phone like maybe 6 times, maybe 6, and that's pushing it. And that's how we got the.
But yeah, the rejection happens, right? Like
oh yeah, and
Frank,
he got
all this stuff is going on.
Yeah, he got 400 no's from everywhere in the comic world until he got a yes.
30 no's.
Yeah.
Before I got hired.
J.K. Rowling was living out of her car and writing in a freaking Starbucks, right? And
exactly.
And then at some point she was richer than the Queen.
Yeah, she was living off of welfare. Yeah, she's worth over $1 billion.
It took Frank Herbert. Frank Herbert's from here too. It took him 20 years.
Yeah, he lived just down south at Tacoma area.
Yep. In fact, so if you're from, you want to know a little bit about Frank Herbert. The Dune is from the Oregon Dunes. where he would go as a kid, and the Harkonnen's factory world was based upon he lived in the Ruston area where the Sarco plant was. And that was they tore it down in the 90s. They spent a decade cleaning the soil, and now there's Frank Herbert Park on the site of where that Asarco plant was. That was the inspiration for the Harkonnens.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it
we
took
know.
him 20 years to get that published,
Yeah.
and he only got it published by going to like a company that was producing like auto, that like produces the manual on how to fix your car.
Yeah, like Haynes. I forget the name of the company, but yeah, they were.
This is the best-selling science fiction novel of all time.
Yeah, and I love the first one.
Yeah.
It took him 20 years. I mean, yeah, exactly.
The other ones,
Sure.
the other ones flesh out the world in the most insane, great way, but
It goes up the rails in a hurry, but like,
you
what
can
I'm
never make
saying
those
is that,
into a
like,
movie.
Just because somebody tells you no, or somebody tells you to fuck off, you need to be strong and continue
It's funny,
continue producing your art because
that's
somebody's
one
gonna
of
like
the
it.
it's one of the blessings and curses of stuff like Kickstarter is you can get your stuff self-published now, but you also lose out on some of that rejection. And some of the people I know that have had successful Kickstarters have had total failures. I know people that have had because the worst thing is to have a good Kickstarter and then you do another one. You're like, yeah, everybody loves what I'm doing, and then your next one fails. You're like, okay, did I just do it at the wrong time? So you do another one and that fails. You're like, oh, was this just lightning in a bottle? And no one likes what I did.
And I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah. So I still love having that publisher model available for people
Yeah. Absolutely.
because there's more reach. Then you have people to help you clean things up. Because I don't know how many times I've looked at games before they've gone to a Kickstarter. My favorite is a couple times we're getting ready to go to Kickstarter like next week. I'm like, dude, you just have notes. Like, this is not a game yet. You're a couple years.
Else.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, we'll be ready. We'll be ready. 6 months after the Kickstarter's done. I was like, no, you are 2+ years away from a game. Like, you literally have bullet points on a page.
It's what you were talking about with the manager, right? Like, I've got an agent with the writing stuff, and you were talking about getting a manager, or we were talking also about just like getting a money person to manage your stuff. Like, that person takes 15 to they take between 10 and 20% of your earnings, but like, that person will get you 10-20% more money than what you would have gotten trying to do it yourself.
Maybe even double.
Exactly.
Minimum, right?
It's like going to court and trying to represent yourself.
Yeah.
Very few people can do it.
Yeah, and I mean
2%
even
maybe?
lawyers will hire a lawyer to represent them because they're like, because as a lawyer, oh, I know what I'm doing, but now you're emotionally involved.
Yeah, you can't dissociate yourself.
So you have to have somebody that understands what you're doing, but can take your passion and make it a viable product versus you just being passionate. Because I'll be honest, the library, we're a nonprofit, yes, but a couple of us have dumped thousands of dollars a year into doing what we do. We're finally getting to the point where we're getting some support from companies that are helping out. But it's been a long struggle,
Right.
and it's been a bit of a passion. And we're now growing from passion project of I want people to play role playing games. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you are, I don't care where you're from. I want you to sit down at a table and play a role playing game. And I would love for you to sit across from somebody that's different from you and have a shared experience in those role playing games. Because if you have a fun group, you are more likely to have those offline conversations with those people to make you grow as a person and become friends.
Just make friends with the street.
Yeah, and absolutely, I love my toe. So I'm like running around with one shoe on and like ice packs wrapped around my other foot for the whole weekend, and I'm sitting. It's late. I was going to do a Star Wars D6 game, and we'll put a sign up out, and then we'll have like we can stay as late as we want kind of thing. And 8 people show, and the 4 standby show. And I was like, F it, well, everybody can jump in. And a couple more people like, can we too? So we have 16 people that basically don't know each other, all sitting at a table that I'm running.
With one DM.
Yeah, and I'm running a pickup game with them all. And it was great because there was like a couple couples.
We're now
but else-
crewing a Star Destroyer.
Yeah. So yeah, well they
You
were
two are
yeah.
turbo lasers. You two are bridge.
But it was great because I got people that didn't know each other sitting at a table now having conversations, like coming up with ideas. And then, it was one of my favorite points was if you've ever been back east, there's a potato chip company, Utz. They make, I think, the best salt and vinegars. My wife was angry at the other end, who's not like engaged, and I was like, "Oh, so what's your idea?" And she starts talking to me. I go, and I just blatantly eating one potato chip at a time. I like this, and this goes on for like 5 or 6 potato chips as everybody slowly starts paying attention, and then they look back at her and like, "Oh my God, wait, hang on, he's paying attention. What's your idea?" And they just like drag her in, and then she's the center of attention. They're all interacting with her now. And the next day, a guy came in. He goes, "The game last night was kind of fun." He goes, "But I was way more entertained how you ate potato chips like a freaking movie villain and got the entire table engaged over an effing bag of potato chips that you're eating in the most evil way possible."
Hey, Utz is nuts, right?
Yes. But it's none of those people really knew each other prior to that event, and they were sitting down, and I hope that all 16 of those people go, "Oh my God, I was at this event. This crazy dude was eating potato chips." They have a wonderful story, and I hope that they've.
But isn't that fun?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And that's what it's supposed to be. Right?
Yeah, role playing games. So you see board game libraries at conventions for years, and the thing with a board game is you can sit down, learn the rules, sit down, play it, have fun, put it away, and never play it again. And you may have a shared memory. I mean, you do, but who's talking about, that one time when I played Mousetrap.
Right, I got this awesome rolling clue this one
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
And I trapped him.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe somebody actually is, because I know a million people that own Mousetrap that have never played it.
Oh, that's a tragedy, because that's the
That's
greatest.
a really fun game.
That's the greatest board game ever created.
It is such a bonkers game. But with a role-playing game, you always have these great like shared memories because you're telling stories, and it's great because I see groups of people that brought them in, they start playing, and then like 6 weeks later, I'm walking by a coffee shop, and they're both in there having a cup of coffee, and I go, "Oh fuck." I walk in, I'm like, "You guys talking about the game?" They go, "No, we're talking about politics." And it's like, "Oh, there goes my game." And they're like, "Oh no, we've been doing it for a while." And they were like, because of the game, and we didn't want to ruin the party.
You guys like Mousetrap?
Yeah. It was funny
we
because
go get coffee every Tuesday and yell at each other so that we don't yell at each other in front of you guys at the game.
because they didn't want to ruin the game.
That was you.
No, it was you, man.
That was the human trap, not the mouse trap. But because of the RPG that they had been playing, and they didn't want to ruin the group, they took time to be polite to each other when they were having discussions outside of the game.
Yeah.
And instead of coming at each other like, "Oh, you're a this or you're a that," they go, let me listen, let me hear you out. Let's have a discussion. Like, "Hey, here's my viewpoint." And I was like, it's and I've seen other people do this through the magic of role-playing games. I mean, I've played role-playing games with people for ages that I didn't like the person, but we were civil to each other all throughout. We worked together, we were civil to each other. And somebody's like, "I thought you didn't like him." Yeah. Like,
I mean, I have friends that like, this is the only thing we have in common is that we get together and we play these games. And it's like, look, I don't like your girlfriend, and you know it, and we don't want to talk about this, and you don't like my politics, and I don't like your girlfriend, and we're not going to talk about any of this. We're going to sit here, and we're going to talk about elves, and we're going to fight minotaurs, right? It's going to be awesome.
It's amazing how you can get 5 people that are all very different.
Elves.
Exactly.
That's fine, yeah.
And then, the mental health aspects, I know soldiers that have used it as a way to, put themselves in a place where they can accept.
Out of their PSD.
Yeah, exactly. Before the pandemic, we were doing some gaming with at-risk teens. We're trying to get back into doing that. And, you get kids that are getting into doing stupid things with bad influences. And you kind of pull them out of that, give them something to occupy them, and then with role playing games, you're teaching them teamwork that we don't know we're teaching, that we are through role playing games.
And it's it's a thing you can say. It's a lot of what you can also say about video games, kind of bring people together in this way as well. But there is this added. I mean, let's go back in the safety of your office or bedroom with your computer, talking to somebody on the computer. it's different to like get out there and sit at a table and talk to another human being, and like that.
Yeah.
That adds a layer. Right. Go to Crazy Brian Snoddy's apartment. But yeah, like
I'll be honest. This is a place I never thought I'd be in the '90s, looking at his art, playing Magic cards.
yes, that's same.
You're welcome.
Helm of Obedience.
We're doing a.
It's always the image that pops in my head when I think of when I hear his name.
I'm looking at 15 samurai helmets right now.
Yes.
Brian's house is a samurai armor museum, which we didn't frame in the picture here, but there's a lot of samurai armor happening behind you guys.
It is cool. I would love to have a living room that looked like that. I'll be honest.
Yeah, but you can't walk in it because there's no room.
You can't walk in my living room. It's full of role-playing games and art.
There's a big like wolf pelt, like inviting futon thing here too.
I just had to clean out my
It's
living
not a
room.
wolf pelt. It's a sheep from New Zealand.
It's a big sheep.
This is one big sheep, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a dire sheep.
it's a dire sheep.
It's a dire sheep.
Sheep and cut it off.
There was a movie that came out in New Zealand called Black Sheep. If you've not seen Black Sheep, find it, look it up. Not the Chris Farley movie.
The Chris Farley one was good though.
Yes.
At least, although I
So-
haven't seen it in 15 years, so I don't know if it holds up.
Or the TV show in the 1970s, Bob.
Sheep. It is a horror comedy, and absolutely worth finding and watching.
Yeah.
And after watching that, I may or may not have used dire sheep to attack a party in. And this is
Are you guys
honestly
having a good time yet? Because we are.
this is
We
the
should talk about the art.
yes.
Okay.
So does he give you?
Out of the blue. So, the storyline was my idea. I said, Ben, we need to do a Conan the Barbarian thing instead of Beyond Thunder River, Beyond Blood River. And I said, we gotta be fighting these kind of creatures and stuff. And he goes, oh, I'm thinking the same thing at the same time. And then he wrote the whole story. And I had this vision of dudes, hard pipe hitting brothers, just rowing a boat down this river, getting ready to go to an adventure. And that was it.
Nice. So for the additional art, how does the additional art come along?
Ben will write things, and then I will think of a scene in it, and then illustrate it in black and white. Yeah, and that's.
And I want you guys
show
to,
them to the
yeah.
people.
And yeah, sorry we're on a webcam, but these are gorgeous. And once this comes out live, I can guarantee that you will all, I love this. You will all enjoy the art that is in this because it is great artwork. And again, art helps sell the story.
Unless you're Steve Jackson.
You know what? But if you look at all the covers of GURPS books, he has good art on the cover of almost every GURPS book.
Of course he does.
Because I don't care what he says if he thinks that the
And Munchkin too, doesn't he?
oh yeah,
Those?
yeah. I do know for a fact he hates Munchkin D20 because it wasn't a game that they created, so they used it was D&D 3 and
But
3.5.
it was Kovalik that did that
Yep.
original art.
Yeah.
It's brilliant cartoon stuff.
Oh yes.
Brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean the art is. I mean the art sells that.
Yeah.
My favorite D&D 3.5 to play is
I thought Ben didn't have a coaster. That's all. That's what's going behind.
D20 because there's a random appearance table in there. There's
I didn't even.
We're
really
putting
have
random
it.
counter tables into,
Yeah.
into our.
I'll
Munchkin
We're
D20.
excited.
yeah, I've got all the books. I can loan them to you guys. They're wonderful. There's a random appearance table in there. There's a spell in there called Meteor Swarm. Chunks of meat, undecipherable meat, and then there's like
waiting for the punchline.
yeah,
in that
there's
video.
warnings of if you try to animate the flesh. There's a feat in there called
Thanks,
yeah. There's a one in there called whack-a-mole. If you hit anything in range, you hit.
Whack-a-mole or whack-a-mole?
in-
Super giant fireball?
Well, but I played. I had a friend who was like, "Hey, I want to run this," and we just went over the top. I played a half dwarf, half gnome. Nobody ever remembers his name because they just called him the Dorm, dwarven gnome, and I was dual wielding great axes at one point, and they called me the Cuisinart because I would swing with one, I'd hit everything, and I'd swing at the other and hit everything.
That's awesome.
And they were like, the Dorm's gonna go that way. All of us are gonna go this way. Because they never wanted to go the same direction I was gonna go. We had a new player jump in, and they were like, "Don't fight near his character." Oh no, I'm good. Oh, your character's dead. Like, what was that? We told you not to fight near his character. I was like, okay, I'm swinging. Hint, just go away. No, okay, you're not moving. It's like, how did you do 200 points of damage to me? Well, I have 4 attacks. One of my weapons deals double damage to things with wings.
He was I rolled him up as a half orc. So one thing I very much enjoy doing, and that these kind of games allow for, is to like kind of reskinning guys. So I wanted my guy to be a Minotaur, but I rolled him up using the half orc rules because the half orc's the biggest and strongest of the player characters in the book in Pathfinder 1. And so he's a Minotaur, but I didn't use. They have the rules for the monstrous races, and they're all bonkers, and it's just I'm not going to cast maze.
A lot of the monstrous races rules kind of get borked. They sound like a great idea until you start using them. You're like,
but then it's also like some of them. It's like, but you there's that level adjustment where it's like, if I'm a Minotaur, then I'm a level 1, while everybody else is a 5. I was just like, whatever. I'll roll him as a half orc, but I'm gonna.
Yeah.
He's a Minotaur. And so I had him in these gladiatorial pits underneath this like rich jerk's like castle, and all he knew was war, but he like fought his way out and escaped, and now he's like trying to make a name for himself. But it was just kind of my way of explaining why he had no intelligence or wisdom or charisma, but he had a lot of strength, dex, and con, right? But then my friend was just like, hey, he's a Minotaur. He's like a retarded Minotaur. I was like, well, that's not how I'd phrase it, but
okay, yeah, that
I
works.
guess that's what he is. My brother had brought. I forgot to bring beer to D&D, and my brother had brought some rosé wine. And for whatever reason, I had this idea in my head that a rosé wine was more like a wine cooler than like a real wine. It was like right when rosé wine was like starting to like, pick up, and I was like, well, it's like it's pink wine. It's probably fine. So I'm drinking it like a beer.
Oh.
And then like we get to this part where it's just like, because we get to this part where like we come to this town and all these people are packing up to leave the town because this giant hole opened in the middle of town and all these monsters came out of it, and I was like, going in the hole. And everybody's like, no, were you not paying attention to anything the DM just said? We're very clearly not going in the hole. It's full of giant monsters that are going to kill us. I was like, I'm going in the hole. I'm a warrior. I'm a barbarian. We're going to go in the hole. And everybody's just like, okay, he's seeing rosé. The Minotaur is seeing rosé. We got to go. We got to take him out of here. That was my favorite character I ever played ever. Because then I just immediately, every time we would play, I would get into that mindset.
Nice.
And then, like I said, like some of my campaigns like this one lasted like a year and a half. And by the end of the year and a half, I think my friends all thought I was a complete moron. And I'm like, I'm in character. When I say I'm being the Minotaur. I got a 6 intelligence, man. I got 7 intelligence, man. Like,
one of my favorite characters ever was a sorcerer that had a 3 intelligence, because we did the. Well, we did the, hey, you roll 3d6 and just roll straight down. So I had 7s and 8s and most, and then I got a 3 intelligent. I was like, oh God, and I rolled an 18 for charisma.
You're like 10% smarter than a house cat.
Yes. So I was incapable of communicating, but
you're a Kardashian?
Yeah. I was a Kardashian after a drunk night out. So we figured that Mother Nature just really loved this character. And it wasn't that he cast spells; she cast spells to protect him.
It was just like a pet.
Yeah, and I would go into town and not because 3 intelligence. What do I, it's like, and just people, because I was so cute and charismatic. People gave me stuff. It was the silliest character to play
So
I've ever.
You're a Twitch thought?
Yes.
With the Minotaur, I got
that character could have started a tub stream.
I had no skills that didn't involve like jumping or running or punching, right? And then it was just like at some point, like the monk in our party convinced me to like I was like part of that religion, and so then I took a level of like cleric in that religion, even though I had like an 8 wisdom, so I couldn't. I literally couldn't cast first level spells.
Was this the cannibal barbarian character that you had? That
No,
had the,
this was different.
Beef jerky wieners around his neck.
That was totally different. That was a different character that got powers when he ate human flesh, so he would carry
Hold on a
various
second.
parts of other humans around his neck. But that was not. I didn't DM that quest, and I didn't create that character.
I
It
will
was
support
unrelated
for a very
unrelated story
short
that
time.
horrified.
Uh-oh, he didn't take his mic off.
Brian, your mic.
Hold on a second.
I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah, I was like,
Ting.
that would have been an entertaining Twitch
This is the
moment.
thing you're talking about, right? Where it's
Might
like,
get more viewers.
like this story is like, I mean, this is the kind of experience that you can have with an RPG that you couldn't have with a board game.
Exactly. And hey, here's
best
the
thing with a
core
board
set
game
of
is like,
rules.
oh, I rolled Yahtzee or whatever.
Yeah,
and I
exactly.
did it and I won. But like
Yeah.
nobody remembers that the way they're like, oh, this one dude played this crazy character that like that Minotaur story is literally from 10 years ago. But I will
There I
never
was, hitting the human trap again. There I was. I was really close to if I would have rolled a 5, I would have landed on this purple property with hotels, and I would have been bankrupt. But if I rolled a 4, I landed exactly. You
This game sucks.
Rarely do you hear the epic board game story, but everybody that has played role-playing games, even one. If you've only played a board game, role-playing game once, you have a role-playing game story.
remember that character.
Yeah,
man.
you're like, oh man, I've only played one, but I played this this sorcerer, and oh my god, I got to do all these cool things, and they just go on about, and you always have a story about something you've done in a role-playing game. And that actually is a good segue to, so something we like to do is called player character confessionals.
Okay.
So in character, so you tell us about the character, and then in character, tell us a confessional that so like time that I had the the diamond that we were all searching for, but I'm up next to the exit, and somebody woke up the red dragon. If we would have all teamed up, I could have taken care of it, but there I was. I just left, and I got to keep all the loot. Yeah, it was something to that effect. So
Okay.
either you have a, and then you
I have a
tell
great
it
story about this.
in character.
Oh gosh.
That's because what we do is we clip these out, and then we're gonna put them back up on YouTube. But it'll be a shadow form with a brick wall and a light behind it, and we'll modulate the voice. So
Okay.
like Unsolved Mysteries, the
Got it. All right. I will tell you one story first, and then I will think of one involving me. But I want to tell you my favorite story involving like player character, this sort of thing. We were playing it was a one-off very early on in my role-playing game career. I was like mother-in-law apartments behind like his parents' house. It was like my friend's friend. I'd never met this guy before. We went to his house. We rolled up characters. And we played them that day in this one place. I never went back, and I never saw that guy again. Right? It was this one-off. Like and we're going through this dungeon to get this treasure at the end. And there's this one dude, we're all kind of doing our thing. I'm playing my dwarf berserker or whatever. And there's this one guy who's a fighter. He's wearing armor, he's got a sword, and he sucks, right? He's not doing anything. He kind of hangs in the back. He's got his sword, he's got his shield, he's got his armor, but like totally worthless the entire adventure. Anytime you need him, like, hey, fighter, like get in front. No, I don't know. I rolled a 12. Like, I missed. I don't know. I'm sorry. Didn't contribute anything to the entire quest. The most useless fighter you've ever seen in your entire life. We get to the end. We kill the boss. Giant treasure room. This warrior takes off his armor. I cast web on the party. I'm actually a wizard. Cast web on the whole party. Takes all the treasure, leaves.
nice.
We played an 8-hour sword. The entire adventure. Only to web the party at the very end and steal all the gold and leave. And we were all just like, well... you won, man. Like you had a completely boring, miserable day, and then you still
3-year campaign, and we played a lot of times twice a week. So a charger fan, that's the little bat-looking creature that grabs the blue milk off the counter at the Mos Eisley Cantina. And so
I love how every little side
So-
puppet in the game
all of
has its own
that
character.
was all named by West End Studios, the company that made the role playing game. Peter's on, or Timothy's on this summer, and
He
confirmed.
wrote a bunch of those.
He wrote all the Heir to the Empire
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, so
yeah,
when
yeah.
he started the Heir to the Empire stuff, they sent him all the role playing game books and said start from here, and then Grand Admiral Thrawn was just always referred to as Grand Admiral Thrawn in the book. So when they were doing don't publish this, I need to come up with a full name. So he's like, how do I name Thrawn? Like, I've never actually thought about what his full name would be. So because of the role playing game, he had a fleshed out world to write stories for, but then it also forced him to finish a character that he'd never fleshed out everything for. So he ended up going, hey, here's how the naming convention for the Chiss. Here's his full name. Here's a little history behind him. So here, you can put this into your role playing game. So if it wasn't for West End, dead IP. You know, people are like, dead IP? I'm like, no, 1987, no one was talking about Star Wars. The Return of the Jedi was 4+ years out of the theaters.
Yeah.
The Droids cartoon had been off the air.
I was
The
playing it in
Ewoks.
'94, and
Yeah.
they hadn't like. I remember like we had like a two. We had been playing our Star Wars campaign for like 2 years when they re-released.
Is available because of the RPG.
That was until the 1990s.
Yeah, 1987 is when the first book for the role playing game came out, and they were told don't go before A New Hope and don't use the main characters. And in the first module, they wanted to use Boba Fett, but they couldn't. He was on their list of characters you couldn't use, so they made a Boba Fett-like character, called him Jodocast. It's down Jodocast and kills him because he's running around not telling people he's not Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But it was. All of that was because they couldn't use Boba Fett in their first module.
Is that where like the Dash Render stuff came from? Because I know there's a whole
Stuff had its own little fun world. But so in this game, we're playing for 3 years. This guy's playing a Charger fan. He's a mechanic. And his little quote was, I've got a hammer. So if stuff's going down, he's like, oh, I got a hammer. He could fix things. And he did stuff, and he would get into fights a little bit. But was what we thought was kind of a useless player in the game. Well, I'm playing a Togorian, basically a feline version of a Wookiee. And he and I are together. There's like 8 guys coming at us. I'm like, look, I could probably handle 7. Can you handle the last one? He goes, I got a hammer. I was like, man, if we survive years hid that he was a Jedi from us. Oh my God. And then we're like, everybody at the table, they're like, what the F? And he proceeds to just wipe out all eight of these dudes. And he's like, you can't tell anyone. I was like,
What do you mean I can't tell anyone?
but oh my God. And as players, we're blown away. And then we figure out that his quote, I've got a hammer, usually was because we pass notes to the GM all the time because we were getting little side things going in Star Wars.
Yeah.
He was passing notes to the GM like, hey, I want to use this force power. And it was almost always after he said, I have a hammer. So that was his way to tell the GM, to let the GM know that he was going to use a force power. And effort was using force powers all this time and manipulating the game. 3 years of gameplay.
About the
Oh, yeah.
because you can text that stuff now. Like I had a guy who was like a secret. I was DMing and he was like a secret assassin, and then I would text like I had a dude who was a secret assassin, and then another guy who was secretly a mind flayer wearing a necklace that made him look like a regular dude, and he was just like, I'm a regular guy. I'm just a regular dude, and I do regular guy stuff. And do you need me to heal you? And he would text me like, I'm trying to kill him. I'm gonna try to eat this guy's brain. and then I texted the assassin, and I was like, the Emperor commands you to assassinate the regular dude who's not doing anything wrong. Like in game terms, it would be really freaking weird for the assassin to be like, I'm gonna assassinate this regular dude who just looks like a human ranger.
Yeah.
But all the players were like, yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I love that. There's a game out right now. Alice is missing. There's no talking in the game. Everything is done by text. So you kind of see cool way. In fact, I got these little communicators. So instead of going to a show and everybody share their cell phone number with strangers, I'm going to set up a little network where people can and I'll bring devices that they can text on, and they can actually walk around the room in RPG.
One of my favorite like DM skills that you have in your tool chest is like, I mean, number one is just rolling dice when nothing's happening. Just roll dice to see like, oh, I don't have anything on my sheet here, but I'm just gonna roll like 6 dice and like block you guys from seeing what they are, and then I'm gonna be like, okay. And then, my other is to like pull somebody over.
Hey,
especially like if they're
we
evil.
need to step out in the hall.
Yeah.
And
Like,
they're
so evil players like, what do you,
Yeah.
what's going on?
And like, well, what do we need to talk about? Absolutely
supposed to rain
nothing.
tonight?
But
I don't know. Can
I
you give
know
me a
that
ride home after this?
everybody's going to think that we're talking about something, so they're going to be thoroughly confused. It's like me pulling out the bag of chips to pay attention to the girl at the other end of the table and get everybody in, like, focus on that character, bring them in.
Yep.
You've got to find that way to get players involved at a level they're comfortable with. Because if a player likes being the background character, don't make them the front of it, the center of it, and get them involved in the game. And it can be tough to do, but
Here's the
it
thing
can be
that's
super rewarding, and you can make great players.
Yeah, here's the thing that's worked for me, and this is another thing I'm going to steal from my brother, but like every time we level up a thing and we're sitting there and while everybody's kind of, everybody does their level up stuff. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to pick your feet, you got to do this. And some people are still picking their. So you guys have leveled up, and usually I wait till they get back to a town. It's like, okay, a week or two has passed game time. You've all leveled up. Explain to me how your guy got those skills.
Yeah.
Like, I've been really focusing on, I'm dual classing in a druid. That gives you a whole other thing. Like, I decided I'm going to get more spiritual. That are just like, I don't know how I explain that I swim better now, but like, I've been taking swim lessons. Okay, cool. Your swim instructor's in trouble, and now you got to go help out. But that's another way that like allows them to participate at the level at which they're comfortable.
And I've done that with characters. Like, I want to put points into lock picking. Like, well, have you had anybody to help train you? And if you want to get better at lock picking, you better make some lock picking attempts before you rank up. Make them actually use the skills that they're working on.
Like
not magically, I'm better.
Blocks, and I've been doing that. And like the people who don't want to be involved, people who are just happy to sit there and be part of the crowd and not be involved, like they won't give you stuff. But sometimes those people, in my experience, like the real quiet ones who don't kind of interact with the rest of the party and stuff, if you wizard and I'm gonna like learn all this, and like sometimes they'll give you like crazy stuff.
You're like,
that
whoa.
you would never think of.
Like, while everybody else has been playing, you've been writing an elaborate backstory. That's why I love going back to Star Wars. Is you're making a hyper jump from point A to point B, and it's episode 4 gave us, he's practicing, getting shot by a targeting droid. So I mean,
when he shows up in Return of the Jedi, you're like, oh boy, okay, this guy. This guy's
exactly.
leveled.
So from this planet to this planet, what do you do for those 3 days? And people are like, well, I just hang out. Like, okay, you just hang out. Great, your character's not getting better. Like, oh, hey, I'm gonna work on this. Oh, hey, I'm gonna pull up news from the HoloNet from where we're going. And it's great to. I love when we have the.
Are you playing games? Are you just talking? Are
you two building a stronger bond as characters versus everybody else that's now ignoring you?
Oh no, we've been arm wrestling the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now we got a thing we can go.
I love so. It's a great thing to build downtime. Imaginary downtime in games, and again, nerds where they can fly from one end of the galaxy to the other and back in like 6 hours. You're like, oh yeah, like, okay, that's.
So that's a thing actually that I want to kind of bring back to what we're working on, which 5 adventures that take you from level 1 and at the end of 5, like each one's going to take you to the next level. But there's time gaps in between, and so the way I envision this working, like a wide range of things. You know how I mean, going back to the Conan stuff, which is kind of the Conan the Barbarian stories, the Robert E. Howard stories are kind of our basis for what we want to build off here. And in those, it's like I'm in this like swamp that's basically Scotland, and so the way that we have our modules set up is kind of that, right? We don't put the connective tissue between this one ended and this one begins. I don't want to. It's beyond the scope of. If I was going to run the adventure myself, I would do the connective bit in between.
Yeah.
But it's beyond the scope of the way that when you create your own mod, it becomes very difficult to run or to read or any of that stuff, right? So we want to leave a little bit of license for the DM to like. We're going to take you here. It's going to get you 3/4 of the way between level 3 and level 4. If you want to run a little adventure in between, it gets you to 4. That's great. If you want to just start with the level 4 adventure and say, hey, it's been a month, our last adventure. You guys have been moving around. You've been traveling, been having adventures. You leveled up. What have you been doing? What's happening? What's going on? Why are you level up? Like, what adventure? Like, and in that scenario, you can be like, oh, we had a whole quest when you weren't there, right? Like, in between this to this. we like
like doing movies or TV shows or between seasons.
Right.
You know, like, hey, yeah,
It
what
doesn't-
happened between season 1 and season 2? Oh, a lot of stuff. But we'll talk about it, but we'll not go back and show it.
guys. You could throw this mummy tomb into any adventure anywhere, and it would happen organically, and that's a little one-off adventure. If you want to run this whole thing as a campaign, you're going to have to either insert some stuff in between or do this bit, which is what I've been doing when we've been playtesting it.
I love doing stuff like, because when you play one campaign that's just straight through, it can get really sluggish, and you might get bored with your characters even.
And you get stuff where it's like, oh, I have a skill that like I took craft magic item at level 5, and like it allows me to make magic items.
Exactly.
I got to sit here and make this. I got to write these scrolls.
Yeah, and like, hey, I need to learn spells. That takes me X amount of time. Oh, hey, go adventure without me.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for this, it would just be kind of like, if the DM wants to run in between, like it's more of like kind of a guide. Like here's the start. This gets you halfway to the next level.
If you watch that movie more than the one I'm watching now. But also a lot of modern movies are not well written.
But that's the other thing too. Is like I don't really give a shit what Han Solo did before like he met Luke Skywalker. I really don't care about that much. It's
I don't know.
Probably interesting, but like I assume it was cool. But I don't.
You haven't read the young Han Solo series trilogy.
It's supposed to be great. Yeah.
And then
those are good.
Those are great. And then AC Crispin, she did the young Han Solo trilogy.
I never read that.
Sadly she passed away a few years ago. So that leads up that explains why he understands Wookiee, and it leads up basically from
the movie didn't do.
Oh, I know. And if you
which is why that movie is 99% crap.
I'm sorry I brought up Han Solo. I'm sorry that was the example I used. Like other like awesome EU thing that is no longer canon, right?
Yeah, but with that, there was somebody wrote a trilogy of books to give Han Solo's younger life, because you don't need to know his little kid life, but leading up to when he joins the Empire. You don't care about his time in the Empire, and then the Han Solo trilogy picks up shortly after he leaves the Empire.
I'm sad we lost it. I'm sad we lost Thrawn. I'm sad we lost Mara Jade. I'm sad we lost...
And says, hey, all these are alternate reality. We're going to start over.
We're just going to do Heir to the Empire. Just do Heir
to
the Empire.
I'll volunteer for that.
Yeah.
Just
if
do
you
Heir
want
to
to hire me as a Han Solo
Heir to the Empire. It was so good. It was so good. That series was so good. We should have just done that. Had all the people. They were... But sure. But it like...
Yeah.
It'd have been fine. They could have made it happen. They could.
I mean, even Lucas went in, and Lucas, when he did episode 1, 2, and 3, destroyed a ton of canon stuff. And the
midi-chlorians, right? Like,
the midi-chlorians. Well, Boba Fett. Every book about Boba Fett leading before that had come out before episode never existed, and now the Mandalorians.
Could have said some of that stuff was just legendary stories.
Well,
that's why they call it Legends now. Yeah.
Well, we could have picked up. You're right that like the Heir to the Empire stuff wouldn't have worked right after, but like we could have picked up, assuming Heir to the Empire had happened. That would have been fun.
Oh yes.
Oh my God, I'm getting on a tangent.
You think? You think Ben's getting carried away?
I'm getting red.
You haven't seen nothing yet.
These are things that I can be very passionate about.
Yeah. I'm gonna put on one of those samurai helmets. I'll be right back.
Well, I mean, overall, Star Wars was not an action flick series, and both of them they tried to Jar Jar Abrams tried to cram action into movies that weren't.
Because here's like a more of an RPG relevant like situation here, which is just that like I hate the thing that happened kind of in this gulf, right? There was nothing. There was nothing after Return of the Jedi. There was nothing before. Yeah. There was never going to be a prequel trilogy. There was never going to be a sequel trilogy.
It was I hope I could do this someday.
Right, and so like we had the role-playing game, and then that made those books, and those books came out, you know, at the perfect time for me. I was like 16 or 17, and I read them all, and I was like, this is
proved. So like, hey, this is the world of Star Wars that has been created. So it wasn't like the Star Trek books that came, because if you read Star Trek books in the 80s and 90s, they were all over the place. Like they didn't care.
That stuff you love never happened. So the first scene of Star Wars, of the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek, is like, actually, the Captain Kirk stuff never happened.
Yeah.
We're going to kill all that. We're going to blow Vulcan scene 1. And now nothing that how you guys got to like level 8. Like, actually, I'm going to pull out your character sheets from level 3 because none of that stuff happened. It was all like, actually, this guy shows up and
following basically a trickster god tricks them into going into this mansion, and they spend, you know, and then they find out, you know, hey, they've been tricked. So I took all their gear away, but they kept all their experience and stuff. Like, here's all the stuff you had from 3 months ago. But I wasn't the guy that was going to take everything away from them. I just took their gear
They
away.
had a medieval setup there, and they had this book that had like 5 locks on it.
Yeah.
And it was locked up by these 5 books. It was this big fat book, and we were like, let's make a magic
The
spell.
library, so it goes around with us.
So so this was like that, and you open it up, and so the idea was you'd open this book, and like you flip the pages, and every time you flip the page, it's like a different plane. And we wanted to do planar travel stuff.
Nice.
And this was like right before Avengers, because that's the story. So we're going through, like, they get this book, like they find the book, and they want to get the keys for it, and they get it open, and they're starting to go through all these adventures. Quarantine happens, we go online.
Yeah.
We're having these adventures, and for all of quarantine, for like a year, we're going through, and they're traveling to these different areas, and they're trying to find all the keys or whatever. And they go from level like 3 to like, I don't know, 10 or 11. And they come back and they're going to kill this guy that they've been wanting to kill the whole time. Like they're going to go back to the final boss, and we finally get back in person. And he was on his side. And she telekinesis the book away from the wizard who's been carrying the book.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah. And so she takes the book, she opens it, or the dude opens it, and he absorbs all of the levels and I had the printouts of their character sheets from level 2 that I had gotten at quarantine, and I handed them out to everybody, and I was like, you get to keep all your gear. Reports out immediately like Loki would. And then there's his 3 bodyguards are just like level 6 fighters that you guys have been stomping.
It's too heavy now.
I got too much stuff.
Carry my shit.
I'm encumbered.
It
No.
was so rewarding. Everybody was so mad.
See, and mechanic, you can't just be like, oh, yep, none of that happened. I'm starting over. You know, same story but new thing.
Because for me, like that was Heir to the Empire came out, or 15 when Heir to the Empire came out, right? So for me, that was my Star Wars experience.
Yeah.
I knew Star Wars stuff. Like I didn't get to see Return of the Jedi in movie theaters, but I got to read this book the day it came out.
I slept on the sidewalk and ditched school to be the first in line to see Return of the Jedi.
I was born in Spain, military family, and watched it, and then like a couple days later we fly out of Spain, and then Empire Strikes Back comes out. So as a little kid, now these movies are back to back in my brain, and as a little kid, time is even more warped. So now, like the 2 years I've got to wait for Return of the Jedi is forever, and the story's not done, and. We see all the posters for Revenge of the Jedi that went up at the theaters, and my brother and I are like, well, why you guys? My brother and I each have a Revenge of the Jedi poster from the theater where we were living at the time, and then then I remember, oh god, it was a month later is when it actually came out, and we're standing in love of that
When
space
I would
battle.
come home from
That
school,
space battle was the greatest thing ever filmed in a science fiction movie.
Oh god, yeah, I still love that
Forget
space
about
battle to this day. The space battle in Rogue One was awesome. The rest of that movie I hated, but the space battle in Rogue One was great. But it still
good,
wasn't.
too.
It still didn't have the epic feel that the Return of the Jedi one
I
did.
agree. So like this is a thing that everybody.
And then the one in
So here's the thing. So like when I would come home from school every single day of middle school, probably for 3 years or 4 years or whatever, I would watch the last hour or last 45 minutes of Return of the Jedi. And this is a thing that I think so many people have tried to reproduce unsuccessfully, which is that it's not just that the space battle is amazing. It's that the space battle is intertwined between the battle
ground-
for Endor
Yeah.
and the lightsaber battle.
And
Yeah.
the lightsaber battle.
And they're all arcing in different directions at the same time. And
Yes.
you've got these 3 things that are happening,
Yeah.
and they're all
And-
cut so
like a couple minutes into the ground battle of Rogue One, I looked over at a friend and said, "Here's what's going to happen." And
Yeah, I know.
they used, and that
they
was
did.
yeah, they used. The cable was too short to refuel. The button that they have to hit is on the other side of the battlefield. The first guy's going to die on the way there. The second guy's going to hit it as he dies. It was like all of those were just bad writing tropes. And I was like,
They're
man,
not bad writing. They're
But-
just used way too much
They're-
to go.
and especially with Sci-Fi Channel that they just happen to put Star Wars on top of.
my favorite Rogue One story is
And I also hate the ending of Rogue One. I think they did it wrong.
I
What do you
agree
think?
with you.
So Vader chasing the guys with the plans. He should have chased him in the ship, guy down, and then you cut over to Tantive 4. We just received a signal, Princess. to something to that effect.
It
Because
ties it together.
yeah, because in the first one, Leia, we tracked a signal to your ship,
Yeah.
and she's super badass. But if you back it up to Rogue One, Vader chases. You see Tantive 4 leaving the Star Destroyer in the driveway. No, he didn't.
Which is not true.
Yeah,
You're right.
It destroys canon.
yeah.
And it destroys the
It-
narrative of
yeah.
the very first movie.
You're right.
Yeah, it makes her a weaker character. And Vader, do that badass hallway scene. Vader gets in, cuts down the guy just as the signal complete pops up. And point.
Yeah,
You don't have to have the uncanny valley character at the end. You just say that, and then you can fade to black at that point, because now you have butted up right, and it fits canonically better. And you don't have Leia just going like, we just ran away from the scene. They didn't notice us. Like we watched.
Yeah.
I chased the dude onto your ship with the signal or with the chip.
No, you're right. You're right. I like that. I think that's like. I think it was fine, but like you're right that yours is better.
Yeah, and it's just there's a smarter way to do some
at
things.
the end of it, but you're right that like
Or didn't watch episode 4 enough.
I agree.
or didn't watch the first 5 minutes of it.
Exactly.
with some of the costume designs and some of the tropes.
And a lot of the editing is just bad because in Rogue One, so
Even though overall, I do have to say, I liked Rogue One.
it was the better of the
Overall,
Disney
I thought it was
movies.
good.
My
I think
favorite
it was great. I thought it was good.
My favorite story with Rogue One, I want to tell this one is that like it was I don't remember where I read this, but somebody who had worked on it was talking about it, and they were like, we wrote the story, and then it was like right after Disney had acquired Lucasfilm, and they were like, we've been working on this, and we were going to write it, and so like we changed the ending so that like everybody lives and we have a happy ending because that's And then it was like, because it's Disney, and then Disney we have this meeting with Disney, and they sit down, and the Disney like, we wrote it this way because we thought you would like it.
They lost a lot in the editing. So you go back and watch Saving Private Ryan. I'm not expecting a Star Wars movie to be at Saving Private Ryan level.
I'd watch the Saving Private Ryan Star Wars movie.
But you care about all the... When Rogue One should have been that movie.
Yeah.
In Saving Private Ryan, you care about all those characters. When Tom Hanks on the bridge, shooting the tank with a 45, and like you're drawn into
They
like
don't exist.
like thinking about that scene typically chokes me up. And in Rogue One, the bad editing made you not care about the characers.
It seems likely, right? Because the trailer.
Because everybody remembers K2SO. Everybody, when K2SO died when I was in the theater, they were like, "Oh," but none of the other characters. So at the beginning, they miss all these opportunities for you to connect with the characters. So when Jen Erso is hugging her dad and he's saying goodbye, at that point, you lock the camera on her face. You listen to the conversation, everything. Because in the movie, they flip back and forth between him and her. You just lock into her face, watch that young actress build up emotion, start to build up those tears, and you listen to what the dad is saying. Now you're connected with that character. But bouncing back and forth between the two characters, you never care. And in role-playing games, you can do that with NPCs. Make the players care about NPCs and then put them into perilous situations. And then the same thing. Watching a movie, you have to care about the people that are on. You have to connect with the characters. And the same thing, it's build up with them. You've got to find a way to make the characters want to protect an NPC that you're going to throw into peril. All
right, that begs the question: what's your all-time? I'm going to say favorite NPC you've come up with. Not the best, not the most effective, but your favorite one.
I have. So my brother came.
This is your Pornhub login. It's your your Wi-Fi password.
Don't forget your mic.
Mike, Brian.
Yes, and I'm going to include it.
No, turn it off. Dear God.
So Horowitz McGillicuddy III. More often than not, he's kind of this sleazy used car salesman that no one wants to like, that worms his way into the party through various means. Yeah, the leader of the town is like, hey, this is our guy. He's got to go with you, and everybody hates him because he's this sleazy car salesman dude. But then through the adventure, a lot of times he develops a a relationship because everybody sees past the salesman because he's running around selling swords or knives or bows or whatever and
All self-serving.
he seems that way because he has that front-facing, kind of politician. Like, hey, everybody has to, everybody's got to like me. What am I doing to sell you this thing? What am I doing to get your vote? But once he's out with the party, they start realizing that he has a personality that's not the self-serving personality, and he's agreed to come. He actually cares about that, and the sleazy nature of him, getting votes is because he really ultimately wants to do good, and that's why he's here with everybody to make sure that the village doesn't get destroyed. So that's
a difficult transition for a DM because it's very hard to have NPCs have that level of depth because they usually get killed or betrayed.
It is, and get that far. Yeah, well, and that's why I don't put the NPC into all that much peril until a key critical one like that, until the players actually care about that character. And I've used that character a ton over the years. I like to pull him out for long-term games, and even if I don't end up naming him Horowitz McGillicuddy III, but I use that character fairly often because no one likes him, and then 6 or 8 sessions in. He starts off more like the guy that does no work in the office that always hangs out with Donna. Why can't I think of his name all of a sudden? The Indian guy.
I never saw that episode.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. So he's like pretty sleazy, but then if you pay attention to the show, he's got a heart.
But isn't that everybody in that show is pretty sleazy?
They're all semi unlikable NPC, and then make them draw out the character of that NPC, what his true nature is, and go, oh, and then you throw him into a perilous situation, and everybody's like, okay, we really have to go save him. Or oh my god, his wife and kids, and it's hilarious the things that have really drawn
don't
characters.
Exist, who he's convinced them they exist.
Well, no, but they will exist. There's to
they make an opinion, they make a decision 2 seconds after meeting the guy whether to kill him or not, right?
Exactly.
That's what they're looking for.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work. If you're a GM running a game long term, it's really hard to get players attached to NPCs. A lot of people use it with old people or kids.
Yeah. As old lady, this is a trap,
Yeah,
this is pandering.
Yeah, and it's funny because I try to steer away from the old folks and the kid, an apothecary shop or something, but she's not a fleshed out character. She's just a store owner.
Yeah.
And the fleshed out NPCs, that way you don't know whether or not this is a cool NPC that you're gonna love or if it's a trap.
Yeah.
So if you make them all that kind, you make all your fleshed out NPCs, they're like, man, is this going to be a good NPC? Or, and I've had people like, man, I have no clue which direction you're going with this NPC. I don't know whether this person's going to turn us in at the next town, or if this is going to be the one that magically becomes a dragon at the end and saves us all, or I was like, good, because you shouldn't know exactly where. You should know general direction where the story is going, and you guys flesh it out, but I'm the one filling in all the all the fun little blanks.
It's what you talked about with the tropes in Rogue One, right? You show them a tropey character and then change it a little bit, but
flesh it out.
Also, the exciting thing with the role-playing game that you don't get from a movie is that the audience will tell you if they like him or not, and you can adjust him mid-story to become something different. Right?
Where in a movie you have to
yes,
exactly. And if you miss those moments early in that character and no one cares, and Rogue One is a perfect example of that, because they missed that opportunity early on with Jen when she's a little girl. Missed the opportunity to connect you. And Star Wars Episode 4 is a great example of that. Luke standing there staring at the two suns going down. You're over his shoulder. He's staring at the sunset. The music starts to swell up. You're like, oh, you know. And then they come around to the front, and you watch the him just staring off, and the music swells. You're taking that moment to connect with that character.
And there's another thing that you can get with an RPG you can't with a movie is that George Lucas really thought everybody was going to think Jar Jar Binks was hilarious, right? But but if you introduce him in a role-playing...
dumb.
Sure, but if you introduce him in a role-playing game as an NPC, everybody's just like, this guy sucks. And then
you can
you can be like,
Yeah.
oh well, this didn't go the way
Yes.
I thought it was going to. Like he's out, and now like action hero number 1 is going to show up and take the Jar Jar Binks role the rest of the way. You know,
and that's the
Like-
beauty is what you have to work really hard on doing in a movie, you can do on the fly in an RPG.
Okay, this guy's out. You don't like him, he's out. Oh, I just want to push this guy in the river. All right, you push him in the river and he swims away. Like somebody else is going to show up later.
Character's gonna be a great fit into this group, and then just doesn't gel at all. I was like, fuck, I have no place to go with this character. Like, I didn't think I don't want to spend time not like him. You're supposed to grow to care about him, but if
that doesn't take, you can bail and bring
exactly
somebody else in,
yes,
right?
because and I brought other characters in that are supposed to be. Well, the funny thing is when I bring a character in that's supposed to like prod or like stir up the pot,
Go into this mysterious forest and see what's in the forest.
and
All right, well, I got a dungeon over here somewhere.
Yep, and Bobby.
I'm just gonna continue on, right? It's
Yeah.
more like reality TV than it is like
Ben,
a movie.
who was your
Favorite NPC that you've used?
My favorite NPC to
is
play.
Is it Brample?
My favorite NPC to play.
By the way, is a jerk.
Nobody likes him, but I love playing him. So Sir Eric is there's a wealthy noble woman in town who's been captured by cultists, and they worship this centipede god or whatever, and they take her to some cave elf, and you got to go rescue her. And as they're going to go rescue, just shaking all the money out of him. And he's like, "Bro, help me, dude!" And then you have to rescue him, and he's just like, "Dude, I'm gonna go rescue my girlfriend, bro. Like, we gotta go, man. Let's
He's
go."
a bro dude.
Yeah,
Dude night.
And
Dude,
I love,
bro.
Yeah, his name's Sir Eric, and he's gonna go rescue his girlfriend.
Sir Dude, bro.
Who's married to a nobleman in town, and like he's awful.
Don't make me let beer out of my nose.
Some scenario, you're on a boat. You're either pulling it down some muddy river. He appears in the Beyond Blood River, which is this painting. You're pulling some canoe down the river. You're sailing on a boat, and there's just like an island in the middle of the waterway, and there's this. He's wearing like old rags, and he's got this big staff, and he's just sitting on a rock, and
Smoking a pipe.
Smoking a pipe, and then if you sail up to him, he just kind of like hops onto the boat, and his name is Brapple. He speaks in a language called Brapple that is it's tonal, so the only word that he says is Brapple, but Brapple, and he just kind of hops around, and whatever the party's doing, no matter how fucked up the party is, whatever they're doing, he's just like Brapple, and he eats anything that's smaller than him, and it's like whatever it is, like if it's a pet, he tries to eat it. If it's like a familiar or an animal companion, whatever, and he kind of dips. Has 10 charges on it, and he'll heal people who get hurt from the party that picks him up, and he hops around and he says Brapple, and that's it. And people love this character. People always invariably I've run him maybe 6 or 7 times, and invariably somebody takes a level in linguistics and learns his language
Nice.
stuff, and they exiled him from from the Gripply tribe or whatever, and now he just kind of wanders around and he just does his thing, and there's no secret intelligence there. Like, I don't know what people expect when they learn his language, but it's like, I think about the Fireside company. It's like that. He just says Brapple, and that's it. He's just like, yeah, Brapple. when you learn to speak his language, he wants to eat anything smaller than him, and he'll cure you guys. And
I'll be honest. I absolutely love it when character.
Yeah.
And the hilarious thing is, you get one person in the party that speaks whatever language they do, and then they get separated. And no one understands this one poor creature who's now trying to like mime everything at the table. It's like, sorry, no one you're with understands your language. So how are you going to communicate? Oh, I hate you so much. Of course, I've told on stream many times. One of my I normally kill off bards because people play them poorly. But a friend who was rolling up a bard in D&D 3. And going around the table, what do you make? What are you making? He's like, Bard. I was like, really? He's like, you'll see. So I'm checking everybody's sheets, and he hands it to me. So for his performance, he took mime out, and everybody's like, fuck, I didn't see what he did. What did he do? What is he casting?
Oh my god, it's so funny.
And it was great.
That's funny.
Oh, it was the only bard that I've ever loved, and he committed to it. I'd be like, okay, because I had to pay attention to what he was miming as well, because he wouldn't say it.
We have a bard in bar.
I don't know where the sleazy bard trope came from, but so many people play the.
He looks like Post Malone. He's got face tattoos and all this stuff like that.
So many people play the man horror, bard. I have no clue where that freaking trope came from.
This, but it's
Yeah.
kind
It's
of
a
like
rock star.
this.
It's the rock star. It's the
Yeah.
modern.
It's a
You play him
rock
like a
star,
modern day
yeah.
rock star, right? Like that's the.
It's Vince Neil when he was about 22.
So dude, and he works in like technology, and he works on computers, and his job is a tester, which sounds like you just test things, but the idea with a tester is
How do I break this?
somebody
Yeah,
makes a
yeah,
game,
yeah.
somebody
Break
makes a
things.
program, and they give it to him, and he tries to break it. And if you ever met this guy, this would totally track. This is his entire personality, and this is what he was going to do with this game. He's like, I'm going to make a bard,
Yeah.
and he's just going to be that bard that you're talking about. I'm just going to play my lute and try to sleep with everything that will allow me to communicate with it. And I have a plus whatever to my charisma, so like you're gonna have to role play some uncomfortable shit with me.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, I'm not role playing this with you, but like whatever. It works, it's fine. You got it, whatever you want, you got it. Just roll a fortitude save and just we'll talk about this tomorrow. What do you want to do at the bar? You know?
If you're trying to break a game, that's a good way to do it.
Right.
And that's one of the things I love with the libraries because people send me rules all the time. And so it's funny, I had somebody send me a book and like half hour later, I'm already sending them an email. And they were like, have you read the whole book? I was like, I didn't read your fluff. I was like, the fluff, you're going to get people that read that, love your background. I'm looking at your mechanics because most people don't. I was like, here's the issues I've found. They were like, oh my God, that doesn't work. Like, how have we missed that? You know, I love
Yeah, you have to.
finding the things that break a system because so few people do. And and what's the most frustrating thing that will get people to quit a game? Bad mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah, or mechanics that don't make any sense.
Yeah. I talk about it on stream all the time. I call the vestigial rule. Like a vestigial organ. It's one of two things. It's either the one that the rule has changed over time, but it's always been explained. So the wording is still in alpha, where the game is in beta 3.0.
Yeah.
So now the wording makes
one
zero.
word and
The wording makes zero sense for how the game is now, or it was a key idea how the game started. And they don't want to get rid of it because, like, oh man, I thought of this rule, and then we've gone through like 6 or 8 iterations of the game, and this is key to it. And I was like, try playing it without that rule. I guarantee you, it'll be a better game. It's a cool rule, but it didn't do anything for you.
I hear you.
Yeah. Or the next worst is, I made a new rule, and it's like, hey, that rule already exists. And here it is in a way simpler form. They're like, no, but I like how I did it. It takes 3 paragraphs to explain this rule, how you did it. It takes 4 lines to explain how this person did it. Please listen to me. No one wants to read multiple paragraphs to understand a rule when the same exact result is done in just a few lines.
We've 2 like kind of core rule changes that we wanted to like. I mean, that are optional, but like that we were kind of hoping to implement and that we've been trying to implement when we playtest. And one of them is, I think it's a rule. We're all kind of learning 5th. So like I've played Pathfinder for whatever decade and a half or whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that it's that old.
Forever, yeah. But like, if you rest for 4 hours, you get all your hit points back and all your spells back, right, or whatever. Like this is like you restart your character, and it was like
everybody has super magical healing.
Right, everybody can just do this.
Yeah, what the heck is that?
You rest for an hour, everybody gets all their hit points back. Like that defeats the entire purpose of a dungeon crawl in my mind. Of like you're fighting your way through this. It defeats the entire setting. It's
because in the old dungeon crawls, you would make a little while. You're like, "Eff it, we got to get it back out. We got to go back to the city.
Right,
we got to rest for a week before we can go back in." And
Yeah.
have any of those rooms reset? Has something
And
come
by
back?
the way, how much does that cost us? Because we only have so much money.
Exactly.
Right.
You're like, oh, hey, we're going to be homeless for the next week because
Yeah.
we couldn't defeat the goblins in the room that were protecting a small load of gold.
Because we're all out of spells and we're all beat up
Yeah.
and we're all messed up. Like, so I like that, and that fits the tone of what we're trying to do with the old school stuff and the lower magic kind of level.
Yeah.
So like, what we want to kind of put in the book is like, this is what we're thinking is like, we don't really want you to use this rule. The game's not designed to use a rule. If you're going to use that rule, which is in the rule books and you totally are allowed to, you're going to have to kick up the number of monsters. When there's an encounter, you're going to have to double the number of monsters or whatever because...
Having those notes for GMs of, hey, this is what you need to do to fit our world is great because otherwise you will constantly...
Right. Yeah,
because if you don't, your GMs will pick it up. and they'll constantly break it and like, I don't
your
like
game's
this.
gonna break.
Exactly.
Right,
And if you're constantly breaking this, hey, I love the name, I love the story behind this, and then you try to play it and it's all constantly broken.
Yeah, I hear you.
It gets thrown into
it's
the
fine.
pile
you can
of.
take this and you can do whatever you want with it, but yeah, this is when we wrote it with the intention that like you can't stop moving for 45 minutes and get all your spells and hit points back, right? Like,
Yeah.
'cause that's just, it doesn't make sense to me, and it's a rule change to this edition. So that's one rule that we had. And the other one was, I have always kind of had this homebrew rule of, on a critical hit, we always have rolled percentile dice, and we made this chart a long time ago, and I'm going to include it as an optional thing that we
Ben
have.
made it. I had nothing to do with it.
Me and my brother made this 15 years ago.
Yeah.
The idea being behind this that like,
But it's good.
but like the idea being that like Frodo should be able to shoot a crossbow and kill Sauron. It should be a possibility. A
Yeah.
low possibility. You gotta get a natural 20.
One in a
You gotta,
million.
Yeah.
you gotta get a natural 20. You gotta get a 99 on that critical chart. But like Richard Lionheart was killed by a 14-year-old kid with a crossbow, right? Like
Yeah.
anybody should be killable by
Yeah.
anybody else. It should never be an unwinnable fight. And by the same token, there's a chance that Sauron goes to kill Frodo and accidentally kills himself. I don't know what
Yeah.
that would look like, but you could roll a 1 and you can roll a 0-1, 0-0 on
Yeah.
the...
And I'm a huge proponent of that. If you can't do it, you don't get to roll. Go back to Star Wars. Star Wars has the wild die. So if you roll a 6 on the wild die, you add 6, you roll again. I rolled 142 on 5d6 once. I deflected the Star Destroyer blast or the Death Star blast as a Jedi. You do, and you roll a nat 20. Like in my frustration with nat 20s within D&D is, oh, I got a nat 20. I can do X amount of damage against giant things. That doesn't necessarily make sense, but it is awesome that you have that opportunity.
Right. So yeah, you roll a natural 20. I haven't been doing like the to confirm, which is a
Yeah.
Pathfinder thing. We don't usually do that. You roll a natural 20, you roll percentile. 99 is the highest and 0, 0, 0 is the lowest.
Yeah.
But 0, 0 to like 39 is nothing.
Yeah.
There's no critical, nothing happens. 40 to 49,
Yeah.
You get a chance to roll to maybe trip him or disarm him or something, but
Yeah.
you gotta make the
You
roll.
have an opportunity to do
Right,
something cool.
50 to whatever. It's their levels like he's bleeding out, he's unconscious, he's dead, he broke his back, whatever. Like, and then the same thing for the misses.
Yeah.
So we have these charted. It's a totally optional rule, but I enjoy it, and I wanted to put it in the book. So
It's better than, hey, you hit, do double damage.
Right.
Yeah.
My fucking dagger, instead of doing 3, now does 6 to this dude with 250 hit points, right? But like you should be able to stick a dagger in
The critical failures, you roll a 1. Hey, roll that d20 again. Let's see how bad your critical failure is.
yeah.
And people are like, wait, what?
That's exactly it. So first
Like-
it's a percentile, and we have these little. I'll show you the
Yeah.
chart because it's really fun. But we're gonna include that where it's just like, oh, you sprain your ankle, you twist your ACL, and like all the injuries are like, if you're magically healed for 1 hit point, it's gone. But like for the rest of this battle, you're gonna have to deal with like I blew my.
They had a bow, and they were shooting, and they rolled a 1. Okay, your bowstring snapped.
Yeah.
It's broken. Do you have an extra bowstring? No. So you can't use your bow anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. I love doing stuff like
And
that.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. I gotta find another bowstring. Yeah.
And that's why I love doing you rolled a critical failure. Let's see how bad it is.
Yeah.
Is it
I would like to have a chart, which would be
Yeah.
more fun.
Some people
would
don't
just
love
make it
charts.
up.
Let me go wild on that.
Yeah, let me go completely
Yeah.
hog wild.
If you rolled a natural 20, so you roll a natural 1, and let me see how bad I did. Nat 20. Okay, you just lose the you slip the arrow, so it didn't fire.
Yeah.
It's you've lost this attack
One,
versus
You put it right into your foot.
Yeah.
It's from a 0-1 to a 0
And
to a
you take
39.
how
It's
much
like, yeah,
damage? Six-side damage.
You miss and it's embarrassing, right? You're shooting so far off that it's embarrassing, and there's
Yeah.
a chance you like critically hit your ally, right?
Exactly. Well, that's usually taking yourself out of the fight, taking your wizard
one
out.
of your coworkers out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, let's take your tank out. Let's take your wizard out. Oh, you shot your healer. Now your healer's running around with an arrow in his neck, going
Your
ah.
wizard now has an arrow sticking
Yeah.
out the back of his
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
I
He's looking too good.
There's another thing that I like to do, and it's on this same chart. So I have We made it for critical hits, critical misses, and we have them separated for. Cause second edition had a great chart for this, and that's kind of what we modeled it after. But critical hits and misses for, and then I have one for naval artillery because I had a naval campaign I ran for a while, and then I have one for knowledge. So if you roll a natural 1 on a knowledge check, I make you roll a d6, and I roll a d6. I have this little chart, and there's like 6 different things. But like the idea being that you roll natural 1 on your knowledge check. Okay, roll a d6, and I'm going to check it against my d6. And then there's a chance that you get the right answer. So like for me, it's like, I'm looking at this chart, I'm looking at chart 3, I rolled chart 3, you rolled a 3, okay, you got the semi-wrong answer. Some of it's like you don't know anything, some of it's like you get kind of the right answer, you get kind of the wrong answer, you get the totally right answer. So I know that the thing you gave me is the wrong answer, and I have to role play that my character believes that. And so what I like to do is be like, okay, roll d6, I'll roll d6. It doesn't even matter. I don't even need the chart, but like I roll a thing and you roll a thing, and I'll tell you what you know. But you as the player don't know.
Yeah. You don't know if
you the right answer.
Exactly. I've done that. I just do that on the fly. I haven't had them do rolls. I love the theater of just the sound of me rolling dice. They're like, "Oh, go ahead and roll," and they're like, "Wait, are we doing opposed rolls? Like, what are we doing?" Like, I got caught one time by a player that jumped in for a game because I had my GM screen out and I had a die sitting at 20 and a die sitting at 1. And I was like, "Oh man, totally got ya!" And then I would lift up the GM screen, show that nat 20, and roll something, and they're like, "Oh, dude, he totally failed." And the guy at the end, he was like, "Did you literally just?"
Player I used to play with, and he was a very good friend of mine, very good guy. But anytime he had to roll and the game was on the line, he would roll it directly into his cupped hand and cover his hand and say the number that he rolled before, and you could still hear the dice like rattling around. Like, that's a 37, I think.
Yeah. So there's a company that's given us a bunch of stuff over the years, Zuccotti Dice. They're local, and he's got large foam dice that are about yay big. So I had players back in the day that would be like, it'd roll and he'd be like, "I got a," and he'd pick the die up and he'd be like, "I got a," we're like, no. So I brought out, long before these foam dice came out, I got large dice that were about yay big, and I just handed them to everybody. He's like, "Well, I want to use my own dice." So I was like, "No, we just got to make sure that we see everybody's dice." And it was calling him out very specifically because no one else did it. And it was amazing. He went from getting like 17 above on like every roll to getting a wide variety.
Occasionally getting a natural 1, which makes the game more fun when you roll a natural 1.
And like, it's funny, in a couple games we played online and somebody's like, "You're rolling well." I was like, I kind of hate it because my character's becoming the superhero of the group. I've rolled really well. I kind of want to not.
Yeah. Always.
I want to. That's having bad stats makes your character, a more in-depth character. You don't want to be, all 16s and above on your stats. You don't want to always roll, 15 and higher on your dice. It's right, like Deadlands I was telling you about earlier. Deadlands.
Worked on that too.
I love that game so much.
Paintings there.
Yeah, Brom did the awesome cover for it. But with that, in combat, so something D&D's always struggled with is initiative. It's like, "Oh, I'm fast, I go first." Well, you roll to see how many super fast. I get 5 cards. Our sniper gets 1. And you go, "Okay, aces." He plops down to ace of spades. He goes first. Everybody else goes. I've got 5 attacks. I have done nothing. Our GM's like, 10s? 9s, 8s. He's like, "Okay, what do you have?" I pulled 5 cards, all 2s and 3s.
Wow.
I was like dead last. I'm the super awesome gunslinger. I'm crazy fast. Everybody got the drop on me. So I always loved that particular mechanic because just because you're fast doesn't mean you go first. And there's an opportunity because you get more draws. You
hold your shot.
Yes. And if you get shot at,
evaluating, but you hold it.
Yeah.
There was one.
Well, and with that, as if you don't go first, if somebody shoots at you, you can burn one of your actions to dodge. So I had 5. I could have burned a card. Only had 4 actions when it got down to me. So you can burn cards to prevent being murdered.
So there was an advantage of being fast.
Yes.
Even if you don't get to go first.
Yeah. Just and honestly, I could roll bad and only get 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And the worse your stat is, the more likely you are to roll poorly and get 0 or 1. I had a poor guy, like 5 combats in a row. No action this game. I do nothing. It was like, oh my god, we need to boost that stat somehow.
Yeah. I had a get. Well, I was running a quest one time, and like there was this giant like kaiju kind of monster that was attacking this town. It was just some giant sea monster was coming out of the heroes between level 18 and 20 had recruited the party who were all like level 5 or 6. Like they were like, you guys, like we need you guys. You get up in the tower. We're gonna fight this giant monster and we're gonna weaken it. You just get up there and there's a cannon up there that shoots this magical bolt and like we're gonna weaken it down. And when we give you the signal, you fire that cannon and you shoot it and you kill the thing. Okay, it's like complete. The apocalypse. These heroes are fighting this giant monster and they're like doing okay against it, but it's regenerating everything. And so our heroes are fighting their way to the top of this tower, and there's these little like flying monkey kind of miniony dudes trying to stop them from getting to the cannon, and they're fighting their way up there, and then they get to the top, and then there's the cannon, and then our 19 dexterity. We got one more shot, buddy, because if you don't make this shot, like. The heroes, this is the signal, and I've given you 2 shots. You get one more shot. Everybody up there is still fighting. All of these minions are coming over their edges trying to stop the cannon from firing. All right, buddy, what do you got? Natural 1. Okay, I'm away.
And that's why I'm a big proponent
of
my dice as a GM don't necessarily matter, but the players do. So I build out the story, the players flesh it out, and their dice either make them heroes or zeros.
This is not how I thought this was going to go.
Yeah.
I thought you
Wasn't that a Black Sabbath song, Zero the Hero?
Yes.
I thought you would roll a 12 at some point along the way, but in 3 turns, but you did not, and now
Time and time again, like, nope. I'm gonna try again. Nope. On stream, we people can spend points to make players re-roll, and that guy fails, and then somebody, and it's locked down for like 60 seconds, so you can't do it like back to back. So somebody spent some points, allowed him to re-roll. It fails again, so another person spent points, failed his roll, failed his re-roll, failed the re-roll,
That's when you press the thing. Zero the hero. What you gonna do? What you gonna do, brother? Zero the hero. And just press it like Bart Simpson. Like
I actually need to set up. I need to set up like sound cues and stuff.
Yeah, I think it'd be
toilet flush.
Well, my goal is I'm trying to get my basement set up.
I'll be right back.
Mike again.
Yes, Mike.
My goal is to. As much as Roll20 has been awesome, they've given us a bunch of accounts that we can use.
They're great. I loved it, but like it wasn't. It's not the same.
Yeah, it gives you like I know a ton of people that have got back into playing RPGs because of stuff like Roll20. So the really busy people like, man, I haven't played in ages, but I can play now because I don't have to drive 2 hours.
I drew like a map, like a crappy MS Paint map of this town, and then I was like, "Here's the monster," and everybody had control of their dudes, and they're all kind of I'm watching them all. The monster's going this way. He's gonna get.
Yeah.
But like at some point with Roll20, you kind of run into that uncanny valley between like instead of playing an awesome board game, you're playing a shitty video game.
Well, that's my biggest fear with the new one D&D is because it is going to be more bad video game versus a tabletop RPG and games with people in all different parts of the world, which is awesome, especially when I'm gaming with veterans.
It's the only way to do that, right?
Yeah,
especially like
exactly.
good friends who live in different cities and stuff.
And it's better than pulling up a Zoom and doing it because you can still see each other,
right.
But you've got that shared map, and then they just merged with One Bookshelf, their PG, to be used into Roll20, which I think is awesome.
I think there's like a thing to set up. Like I never really I never spent the time on this. Like I spend enough time DMing that like I didn't need to spend more time trying to work on the computer program, right? But like I think there is a way to like set it up to like when the guy moves his person to this spot, like it shows the line of sight of what he could see.
Actually that is
and
all
so he can tell like,
people can take a ton of time to really set that up.
I was still just drawing lines like with the paint tool, and it was just like when we play we just have a big whiteboard and little like minis of just plastic army men, basically nothing more exciting than that, right? But like
I love the theater of the mind, but to me that is just so much extra time and effort.
And I like to have like really diverse environments, so it's like, okay, well I don't have the piece for this, so at some point I'm going to reach this terminal velocity of like now I want to do like an Egyptian theme one, but all I have is the terrain for like
Yeah.
the rainforest. So now you got to pretend that this rainforest is a pyramid wall.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
one of my favorite things that's been donated to the library. They're little 1 by 1 foot, and then they're magnetized, so I can draw things out. So I can put everything out. Everybody's here, and then it's like I'll draw the next, and just, and then
that's cool.
yeah, I actually really dig that. And then for running out of space, just move this one off, move everything over, and there we go.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And we've got about I think we've got about 20 of the tiles, so it allows me for a lot of play
Very
area.
cool. Yeah.
See, I always wanted that, but when I was doing this stuff, it was always a description.
Yeah,
But,
all theater of
then
the mind.
When I got some power, I would draw them.
Yeah,
Here's the forest you're in.
Yeah.
Here's the castle. Here's
Yeah.
the castle. Here's the characters you're fighting. And I had like 6, 7, 8, maybe sometimes up to 14 drawings and stuff
Yeah.
I'd have pasted on the walls. and
So-
He does the cool thing is he paints the tavern signs. So when we do D&D
Yeah.
with Brian, he paints the tavern signs for the different taverns we go to, and he tapes them up on the cupboard, and then he pulls the cupboard door open. So he's like, "You guys
Nice.
are now in this bar." Boom, and there's the tavern sign. And you're
So-
sitting there, and that's it. That's the only thing you have is this painted tavern sign. But it makes a difference because the
Yeah.
tavern sign tells you a lot about the
when
bar.
I got off of active duty military in 06, I sat down with, well, it was early 07. I was sitting down with a friend. We were looking at opening a game store, and we wanted to have 2 private rooms that people could rent. But the table was a whiteboard. We were looking at was you could put 3 chairs on each side, 1 on each end, and then just above the GM was a monitor, a screen, and then you could have access, and then you go, and this is what you see. So you have whatever
That's
art of the
pretty cool.
monster, and I still would love to see people do stuff like that because if you have access to great art or that will enhance what you're doing, because some GMs do struggle with
if you
it.
have access to Ben and Brian,
Yeah,
That's the hope.
then you have access to all the cool stuff.
That's the hope for what we're doing. So a lot of the pictures and stuff in here are going to be things that you could would be possible as like handouts, right? So like this painting or this drawing here with the spider, right? Like, or this even the goblin that we're looking at here. Like, you meet this guy and then you just boom put it here. This is who you meet.
struggle with the details. So if you can give them the access, those little art pieces that really showcase the monster or the setting, and then they can.
That can take work for some people.
But yeah, you see the cool
No, it
picture.
is. It's cool.
Yeah, you see
Yeah.
the cool picture, and then we'll write like a little 2-sentence thing of like, oh, you go down this dirty
And you can
alleyway.
throw them
and-
there and anywhere.
Right, yeah. You got the picture of the Lonely Kraken bar. It's like it says the Lonely Kraken has got a picture of a squid.
Exactly.
And you put that out there, and like people have a good picture of that, and you don't need to be Hemingway to like
Exactly.
DM
And-
that
and,
if you can
you know,
make those
and-
2 lines and show that picture.
People watch a lot of the streamed games and they're like, "Oh man, I've got to be like that." I was like, "No, you're
you don't.
one, you're never going to be like the bitch." They
Hollywood.
yeah, exactly. So they have the experience of building the scenes and stuff. You're just learning, or maybe you've been doing it for a few years, but you have a day job. You're not working on help you give you the art and the assets to make it a better experience for your players is always great. I always love to showcase things that help GMs tell stories better, or give facts, and it's cool pieces of art, and then on the back people can those were
That's
Yeah.
what we do. He gives me pictures
Yeah.
like that, and I write in. That's
Yeah.
our show. That's our YouTube show,
Yeah.
basically.
and
That's
I've
your
got
entire career.
Yeah, and people were doing that back in the '80s. I've got some of the old cards and stuff that were put out by third party people,
Yeah.
and it's just some line and ink art that's of cool things,
I remember
and
seeing
and they'll have like a name like the whatever sword, and then you fill in the blank of what this sword does.
Yeah.
And I love stuff like that.
And one of the things that's like worth mentioning with that stuff that like I think a big problem for new DMs is just over like giving away too much good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Giving away too powerful magical stuff, and then all of a sudden your party's like way too powerful for the level they are, so they're killing things easily that can kill any member of the party if they hit it once, right? Like,
Yeah.
you run into that kind of valley.
I've done this a number of times. Get access to some magical items, and then they run into a thief that's like way more kitted out than they're like, oh my god, my +2 sword does nothing against this dude. Like I hate you so much. Like I thought we were doing, you were being generous, but you just set us up with generic equipment in this world. Yes. You're going to run into almost all the villages you run into are going to have named items. You have generic +1 sword or generic +1 bow or whatever. And they're like,
Well, that's what,
yeah.
kind of what I was talking about. That's kind of where I was going with this, where it's like, I don't like to overgive good stuff, but I like to name my +1 swords.
Yeah.
This sword is called Wave Rider. It's +1. It's a cutlass. It's a pirate cutlass, but the hilt is golden and it's shaped like an octopus, like going around, and it's got a.
And
jewel
as I
here.
swing it, it shimmers like waves in the ocean.
When you
But
pick,
yeah.
when you pick it up, you
But
smell the
it's
sea, and it does an extra cool. I don't want to sell that. We paid Wave Rider for our game.
I painted it. I named it,
You did.
and it's not a cutlass. It's a crease measure.
Oh yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, you're fired.
Sorry, Ben's fired now.
Yeah, sorry. Guys.
Well, we've been going for
gotta
quite a while. We need to wrap up. So, what's the best way to get a hold of you two? So,
You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Dungeon Mastery, or you can find us at badassoftheweek.com. The Dungeon Mastery stuff's all in there as well, and then all the history stuff that I do is on there. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of us, because we never tweet.
yeah.
Yes, especially now that Elon Musk owns it. I mean, yeah.
I mean, it can't do any worse than what it was. I mean, Twitter's been a cesspool since day 2.
Day 1.5.
Yeah. It took them a little while to get 10 or 15 tweets going.
Yeah.
And best way to reach, find what you do on a regular basis?
Go to briansnoddyart.com. You can get a hold of me there, and I'm on Facebook.
And TikTok? You TikTok?
No, don't do that.
Don't listen to Ben.
There's a lot of Brian Snoddy dancing videos on TikTok. You want to watch him karaoke UFO by
So, stay tuned. That they're gonna check out their YouTube, see what they do there, and they're in the future. And we'll be chatting with them again when they get closer to launching the product.
Yes.
I'm excited for it because they're coming at this in a way that a lot of other groups are missing out on, because you've got a designer that's trying to find an artist, whereas you have an artist and a writer that are going, hey, let's make the thing we want.
Yes.
kind of sharing a vision and kind of trying to
Yeah.
move forward
We're
towards that,
sharing
so-
a vision.
Yeah.
And
So-
we're looking for summer 2023, ideally.
Yeah.
For release. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Maybe we'll drag you on.
We should totally do this.
Yes. Look forward to that.
Yes.
And then everybody, I hope you know how to get a hold of the library. So you can go to alexandriarpg.com. Our social medias and everything are on there. If you can, find a way to assist the library. We are a nonprofit. We are, I'd say we live off of 3 types of donations: people, time, books, and money. Time, we've been getting good volunteers that have been coming on and helping us out a bunch. Books, we've grown from 348 books from our first event to over 6,000 now. But we live off of all the assistance we can get from anybody out there. And hopefully we'll have some cool merch coming up this next year. We're going to do some enamel pins and maybe t-shirts and stuff. So please, any way that you can, give us assistance. Follow us here on Twitch or here on YouTube, depending on where you're watching. And I think that's all. And I think now the library